Yes, legends, we're back for another episode. This is 26 Podcast. I'm your host, Rogan McGeorge. Welcome to 26 Podcast. Today, I've got Scott Miller with me. Scotty, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. I can't believe... how many podcasts have you done?
This is episode 14, I believe.
14?
I think.
I'm probably third tier guest at the moment. Taking over a year to get me in, mate.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well, we did talk about it, didn't we, when we was obviously both at Langley.
Probably wouldn't have been appropriate, would it?
No.
Here on a Wednesday night.
Yeah,
Chat.
yeah, that's true. No, I did think it was... when I was thinking about it earlier, I was like, it's probably the perfect time where we can both relax, have a beer and have a catch-up. If anything, it's a good excuse to sit down and have a good catch-up with you.
Well, I haven't spoken to you much, so it's great to connect again. And more importantly, we're just talking off air about coming and watching you guys with no pressure at Langwarrin. How good is it? It's a great time to be around at Langwarrin at the moment.
Yeah, I saw you at I saw that you were there at the Bentley game. And then the Eastern Lion games, there's actually a picture that I sent you, didn't I? I was
how
giving
funny
it.
Was that? Hey, did you get fined for that?
No, the boys have let me off, to be fair.
They know now.
They don't watch this.
During the games, you're standing there, because one of my aims was when I left Langwarrin was to always go back and watch games with my dad, right? So not many people know this. My dad played there, I played there, hence the reason I wanted to return. And, I'm standing there with my dad and you're seeing these players, like obviously he coached there last year, they're like looking out. And Brad said a funny thing. He goes, when he scored his goal, it crossed his mind because they scored right in front of us. And he says, this is Brad Blumenthal. I almost thought about running over and giving you a cuddle. I went, that would have looked a bit weird, mate. Right? You don't need to hug me to get a game now. Your boss is up there, relax, mate. But no, it's a pleasure to be there watching everyone and seeing the team evolve. But more importantly, what we achieved as a club as well was great. And you're still the skipper, mate. How good's that? Yeah, no,
it's good. It's a job that I love doing. And I was thinking yesterday when I had that season where my disciplinary record was pretty bad.
A rascal.
Huh? I remember turning up the following pre-season and saying to like Jay and even my mum and dad and that, like, I know that the captaincy is going to be taken away from me. I'm just going to get my head down.
Really?
Yeah. Work hard. Whatever's asked of me, just do it and make sure that I don't have the same disciplinary record. And then I come in and you were calling me skipper and that, and I was like, shit, to have that lifeline was unbelievable.
Yeah, right.
To still be doing the skipper, being skipper is big for me.
That's
I love
funny.
it.
You know what? We never discussed it, because if you look at it in the whole context of that year, the team was challenged, right? The performances weren't going right. So the pressure on you as a skipper, and I think your natural state, anyway, we've always spoken about that, your natural state is to try and inspire, motivate and connect people. And when the team's dysfunctioning, that's always hard for a leader. So I think that sort of spurted out like a hernia that you don't want into actions of frustration, but it was never even in the realms of discussion, because we could see what you could provide as a captain. We could see how you can connect with the players as well, more importantly. And you're showing that now. You're playing with freedom. You're playing with an understanding of your role within that system, and you're leading the team fantastically, which is great to see.
Yeah, it's one of them, Scotty, where you go, even at that time, I had plenty of experience, should know better in many of those occasions, but you're always learning, and I feel like that season I probably learnt the most that I'd ever learnt about my conduct. I can't ever promise that I am, like you say, I'm that player that plays on the edge, so at times it does borderline. That's what I am. I'm not a Tommy Youngs. I'm not going to take it round three people and score in the top bins.
I thought you were going to say you're not Tommy Youngs because you don't tackle.
Well, yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, we'll give Tommy later. Some. Yeah, 100%, 100%. So going back to the point is you're always learning, even at that age. But I'm really thankful that I'm still captain. I love captaining the club. I know it's a club that means a lot to you. And even after that Eastern Lions game where I saw you there, but I got to catch up with you after the game. Yeah. It was nice. I come away from that and I was like, it's wicked to see you in a relaxed mode, being able to just enjoy the game. Because I know, having played for you, we'll get onto it, what you've done in the game, and your coaching journey and stuff. But I know that you think a lot. And as head coach, I guess you're, even after the game, you're in reflection. You're constantly, you're in it, aren't you? It was refreshing to see you there, just relaxed, chilled, and enjoying it.
I can completely agree with you that it was. Sitting there with my family and enjoying a game of football. Had a couple of Carlton drafts. How good's that? No stress, no pressure. And to see the team, walking off together, hard game for you guys as well. But more importantly, sitting there and reflecting and always wanting to do that, to achieve that, sit there next to my dad, who was a player there. And I'm going to say it's probably more enjoyable, mate, if I'm honest, sitting there being a supporter. And there's nothing more prouder than having a role, and I said this at the end of the year, being a custodian to a club, you're there for a reason. Not only is it financial gains for you as an individual, but, you know, I had a mentor, he was my assistant coach actually at Newcastle, John Paul Dimerini, and he goes, listen, your only role as a head coach or an assistant coach is to improve the place and make sure the place is improved when you leave. And that was always really something that rang true for me at Langwarrin and all my clubs, right? It's a case of, listen, in difficult times, you've got to lead and manage the team in a way that's real. You need to lead the team and manage them through challenging times to make sure that the club keeps moving in the right way. So we hope as a club and as a group that it's in a really good position. And I'm certain that it is, and I'm very proud of my time there, but it was a team effort, you know. From the first player of Jaden Madaffrey and Callum Goulding joining us, Jaden's obviously stepped away, Callum's still there. You know, you're talking about 50 or 60 players during that 5-year cycle. But what was consistent was the commitment of Tanya, you know, Greg, and more importantly, Jamie Skelly. And I don't know, listen, I hope you do it in your lifetime, that you build something with someone that's really important to you and you've known all your life, and then you can go, right, now it's your turn. You know, that's a really refreshing and proud moment to sit there and go, right, Jamie, you and I built this club together over 5 years through hard and brilliant times. Now it's your time to go and do it. And that's a really a great privilege to actually have been able to do that.
Yeah, very rewarding, and I can definitely speak for how the club operates, the professionalism of it, and the stuff that you brought in, even with the injury prevention stuff, the little shed out there where the players
shed, the Peter Tuckett shed.
That's it, where the players can actually go and look after themselves. The culture of the club is important, and you certainly left it in a good place, and we're still, you know, hold those values of everything that you and Scales and the rest of the team have built. So very, very rewarding. We are going to take it back because we're here to talk about you today, mate.
All right.
We're going to take it back to the beginning of your earliest memories of football, and what you could say sitting here today is the thing that made you fall in love with football.
I think it's pretty indicative for everyone. It's family connection, dad being a footballer, and my first earliest memories were my godfather buying me a Rangers kit and having these big boots that were obviously far too big for me, and this photo of me, chubby cheeks, Rangers kit on, and boots that looked like this big when I was a little baby. And then obviously that sort of, you know, increasing to a stage where dad's doing the Sunday lawns and all the gardening, and I'm kicking a ball at his feet waiting for that moment where he's putting down the tools and it's game time. And you know, we spent hours and hours every Sunday. You'd be in the backyard and it was goals were out. I had goals everywhere in the backyard. One there, big, small. And, you know, the imagination part of it as well. You know, kids need structure now, whereas I think in my era, and probably yours as well, the imagination was rife. You were using trees as bouncers and fences, and it was all about being creative. And I just remember days being in the backyard and playing by myself because I'm an only child, so people would say I've probably got 3 or 4 personalities, but I am an only child. But, you know, that worked for me, practicing, and then getting involved in my first team, which was Langwarrin. That was how old was I? 8 years old, mate. And Jamie Skelly's the striker. I was the midfielder, a bit like you, creating all the, you know, doing all the razzling, and he's up there scoring and running off like Alan Shearer, scoring all the goals, taking all the trophies home at the end of the year. So our relationship goes back to under 8. You know, his mum and dad used to drive us to training and stuff like that in this black Datsun. Di and Jimmy will laugh at that, but yeah, we used to shoot off the training, and that was it. That's when it all started. It's
crazy how everyone in football has got a very similar sort of start of their footballing journey. I was the same, had goals all over the place in the back garden. What you said there about imagination, it was just out there with me brother, then out the front playing with all the kids, just imagining that I was whatever player was on at that moment in time, pretending to be them. And those early memories there where you're with your best mate, the car journeys, it's crazy how that really does stay with you, doesn't it? Right until now.
It's weird because, you know, you're growing up, you don't even know the game. It's purely enjoyment. For me, it was purely enjoyment. And, you know, we'll fast forward shortly, but it was probably no disrespect to my coaches at Langwarrin. They were amazing people. But in terms of the tactical approach to the game, it wasn't until I joined Gippsland at 16, 17 years old that I had a famous Rangers player, Stuart Monroe, was the Gippsland head coach, and I was fortunate enough to join the youth team and start getting an understanding of the tactical approach to the game. You know, I didn't even know what a formation was before I went there. It was just, this is how we play. And then suddenly he's talking about 3-5-2 and wing backs and your head's spinning. But then that's when the education began about the tactical approach to the game. And then you layer onto that the intensity of training. I thought my calves were going to explode my first pre-season. Like, the level of training was just surreal. But no, that's a fascinating part, and I just hope that, you know, those challenging times when players go through that lack of motivation, they can actually go back and tap into why they play. And it is about the enjoyment and passion for the sport and being free and having fun. You know, ultimately, although there's a pressure involved, it's about having fun.
Always, yeah. When you were playing at Langy, were you like, could you tell you were talented from early, or?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, how do you answer that without being a knob?
Just say, okay, I was unreal.
I'll answer factually. Limitations, had a bit, limitations, was very fit. We were driven. I lived in Mount Eliza, so I had a mentality to work. I love training. So I was really into training, whether it be by myself or the team. And I think the natural evolution was, you know, not that you're good, but you start to get identified for certain squads outside of your club. And if that's an indicator of you've got a bit, that was sort of my journey, regional teams, playing Victorian squads, getting selected for these types of squads, and then working your way up to different programs, elevated elite programs. So not the ones that you pay to be on now. It's a bit different. But that's sort of my journey, you know, in terms of getting the tap on the shoulder and then being identified from that perspective. And then, you know, you make your step to an NSL team at the time in the youth team, which was a huge step up. You know, you're going from training 2 nights a week at the boggy Langwarrin. It's not the Langwarrin, you know, 20 years ago. Jeez. But to be fair, it was the same when I arrived back in 2018. So the club's moved a lot. But training intensity, quality players, you know, I'm watching games on a Saturday and then you're looking at, there's Archie Thompson. And my first trial game, actually, I remember this. So Stuart Monroe was a family friend of a third party. And I managed to, they knew I was doing okay, come down for a trial. So I turn up expecting to train with the youth team. I think I was 17 at the time. It's pissing with rain. The raindrops are massive. And it's the old Morwell Falcon Stadium, Gippsland Falcon Stadium there. It was brilliant back in the day, right? And I turn up and then, over there. So I'm going, no, the youth team's over there. No, you're with the first team tonight. I'm going, all right, geez. And even just the size of these guys were completely different. I'm a kid. You know,
how old are you at this point?
I think I was 17.
Right.
17. So, you know, I've done maths, English, chemistry, all in PE throughout the day, and next minute I'm marking Archie Thompson in an 11v11 game, right? And I remember it was pissing with rain. I'm thinking, how quick is this guy? And you think, wow, this is a big step. You know, you've got to evolve mentally. You know, I'm living in Mount Eliza and travelling down to Gippsland 4 nights a week. But, you know, it was a memorable moment. You know, Archie Thompson was in his infancy. He was still young, but he was talented and he was quick and sharp. And I'm playing as a third centre back in the middle of marking this guy. And I'm thinking, wow, this is ridiculous. And it's only Gippsland Falcons. And at the time, South Melbourne were off its head. So you could only imagine the next step. So that was my evolution from first steps of Langwarrin and battling away there and being the villagers, as they call us, to then my progression through the ranks.
How did it come about that you went to Gippsland? So obviously, as you mentioned there, that's a fair trek, isn't it, from Langy to
yeah,
Gibson?
Through a third party, because Ernie Merrick was the VIS coach as well. So I got invited to train with VIS, but it was a case of the squad was already settled. So I was a late invitee, but the squad was already settled and they were going to keep track of me for 12 months at Langwarrin. And it was quite funny. I think it was one of our first games. So I didn't communicate to him where I was going. I didn't really have a secondary plan. It was like, listen, we've got 23 players. This is our squad. Probably look at you next year. All right, no problem. Right, I'm not waiting a year, mate. I'm out. I'm off. Straight down there, trialled successfully. And I remember I used to get slaughtered at training. The first 3 weeks being a trialist back then, maybe it's not too similar now, but I was getting launched in rondos, mate. I swear there was this induction of, can we trust you? Are you one of us? Have you got a bit about you? I'm not being funny. 5v2 rondos, pre-warm-up, you're getting launched around the hips, double footer. And you're on the floor going, is this normal? What's going on? And you see them winking at each other, right? So from a lesson being learnt about acceptance, you go, okay, so what's the game here? You need me to show you that I've got a bit about you, that on match day you can rely on me. But they kicked the shit out of me for 3 weeks. And I remember the moment I thought, enough. This guy launched me, and the next time I launched him back. Right, I launched him, proper slide tackle, and put him into the fence pretty much, and then it broke off. There was a little scuffle, And then from that minute onwards, back of the bus on away trips, one of us, Bosch. And I was like, wow, all right. I thought it was a test and they didn't like me, but it was actually a test of going, come on, big man, what do you got? You travel from the city, you live in Mount Elijah, you flash bastard. What do you got about you? So, you have to grow up quite quickly and realise what it takes.
It's like those old school values. I actually prefer it that way. I remember when I stepping in at Cambridge United, the first day of my scholarship.
Yeah.
And there was like 6 or 7 new players there. And so he would have been a third year. Rory McCauley went on and played for like Cambridge United first team, had like a good career and stuff. And I remember he launched me, like he was a big lad and he was known for like being able to hand himself. He launched me. I'm thinking, I'm little now, but I was 16 at the time. I'm like,
beard.
I had a beard. Yeah, wow. I did have a beard. It was well on its way.
Not as manicured. That's not tight, mate.
Yeah.
That's tight today.
This is Jay's artwork, similar to this. Obviously,
no tiger scratches through that.
Nah, not yet.
Okay, it's coming.
He launched me, and I'm thinking, geez, I can't. Right, next time he gets a ball, I'm gonna let him know that I will have a bit of that.
Yeah.
So the next time he got the ball, I've gone and flown through him, and I didn't want to scuffle with him. I'll make that clear. There's some where you go, I wouldn't mind, but. Yeah. He got up, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go, he's going to launch me. He got up, and he went, I fucking love that, I'm going to look after you.
Good.
And me and him, like, got on, what a player, like,
but it must be a level of acceptance, and I think it's driven by, right, are you going to be willing to do that on match day? So if you're willing to do it to a teammate that you're meant to respect and not want to hurt, well, all right, well, this guy's a winner. He's got something about him. His balls are on the table, and this is who he is. But it's a fascinating world, the level of acceptance, because I think the mentality of young players now, they see that as a detraction of I'm not accepted. Mm-hmm. Well, earn the respect, earn the right. It doesn't have to be from bang and snapping someone. It could be through quality as well. But ultimately, it's understanding that nothing's just given to you for free. You've got to work for it, and sometimes you've got to go about it in different ways. Yeah,
it was definitely more like that. You know, my big one at Langy is like young lads on the physio bed and stuff like that. It couldn't.
We've had a few of them. Do you want to name them?
Who could I throw under the bus here? Jakey Brito loves he loves a massage.
He's full time, mate.
Yeah. Lenny didn't he, when he was there?
Yeah, Lenny was busy there, wasn't he?
A couple of times, yeah. There's a lot of young lads.
But to be fair, Lenny was a great young player. And the amount of times he used to get launched in training and never complain about it. Because he's so mobile and tricky in tight areas. He used to get kicked a lot.
Yeah, he's a baller.
And he used to look at me going, any danger? I'm like, get a grip, move on. But no, Lenny was a fantastic young player. But yeah, there were a few that have got full-time jobs on that bed.
Yeah.
There are a few.
Young lads as well. But I tell him, Jakey always cracks up, because I tell him, when you're at a club back home, or whether it's a generational thing or cultures in different places, if you're under the age of, honestly, 25 probably, you're getting tipped off that bed. Yeah. And they laugh, the young lads, at me now, and I'm like, no, I'm being dead serious with you. You'd get tipped off the bed. Like,
now, I've got a question for you. Do you think that's a true reality? Because they're working just as hard as you, right? But the mentality of be tough, be strong, the reality is they're preparing for a game, right? So there is a fine line between it.
Yeah.
But isn't it funny how culturally it's like, no, what do you jog on. But the demands of the game have changed as well.
Yeah.
But they're a bit fluffy, some people.
No, I definitely...
I love a massage as well, mate. Get on the calves. Fantastic.
I never, ever got on one till I was 30, over 30.
Right? What age are you now?
32.
Oh, my days. You're flying, mate.
Only 32. The last couple of years, I started getting on the physio bed. I'd never had a rub before a game, ever. Only time I would ever be on the physio bed is if I'd had an injury and I was almost being forced on there, up until I was 30.
No, you're
brainwashed.
You're brainwashed.
I have to be on there now. If not, I feel like I'm thinking, geez, nah.
Listen, if you put medical science in front of it, it's actually a lactate flush out, right? So if you call it that, well, you're doing yourself a great service by having one, right? So maybe just position it differently in your head.
Yeah.
It's not about being the old time tough guy. Lactate flush out, mate.
Yeah.
Speak to Simon Story; he'll tell you all about it.
Yeah. I'll make sure I've got a.
I was on the phone to him before, and I said to him when he answered, I said, "Listen, I'm at the front of Rogan's house. I've got 3 minutes. I need to get in there. I don't want to be late." And it was a bad call to take at that time because, geezer, I was lucky to get in here. But I'm on time. He'll watch this back and he goes, "He's right. I can't complain." He loves it. He's a cracker.
Yeah, no, he's a top bloke. I've been giving him some stick this year, but he's not been having a nibble. He's not been chomping. He was doing a demo and he was like, you know how you have two groups in training, and you got a group over there, a group over here. Skels is explaining what you do here, or Paulie was one of the two, and Story's got to explain the exact same thing, but just over there. We're like that, waiting for him, and he's doing this, and you see his arms going and that. So I'm this side of the pitch. I'm going, yeah. I used to play with Archie Thompson, roll it into him here.
Wow.
He used to drop it. I played with Kevin Muscat, who drop it down here, and he could definitely hear me, but he weren't nibbling. All of my group were like busting up laughing.
How good's that?
And I had to go see him after the session. I was like, sorry, you could hear me, couldn't you? He went, yeah. He just didn't come out.
Here's a story about Simon. So Simon obviously came to the club 2 or 3 years. I think it was maybe the first year at Langwarrin he joined. And he's another one. So you're talking about going back to your roots. Obviously Jamie, Ben, Paulie, known pretty much all my life, or footballing life. I've played with Simon as well, right? So you're talking about attachment. And I look at so many other clubs in the NPL, and I look our scattergun approach to hiring and firing and what the coaching staff looks like. If you look at the coaching staff at Langwarrin now, everyone knows each other and known each other for 20 years. So the reason they're at the football club is not just purely to progress their career. And that's got to add some value somewhere, right?
100%.
Whether or not be security and trust, yes. Yeah, but Simon and I were under 12 regional squad together, and he was just as loud back then. You know those headers, you hear him story, and he's 10 yards away and he comes flying through. But Simon was such an underestimated player. The quality he was phenomenal, because he used to be a machine. Absolutely.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, wing back, full back, absolute whippet. So no surprise he had the career, because even at 12 he was very mature, very authoritative on the pitch. So to bring him back to the club as well, I think personally the coaching staff you've got, especially with him as well, is a really good sounding board for you as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's get back to your career. So you're at Gippsland. I know that you had an injury early. Was you 18 when you broke your leg?
Yeah, that was a disaster. That was actually a disaster. It worked out in my favour, because it afforded me the ability to focus on other things, i.e. study. But it was a crazy story. So it was actually a Rangers charity game in the off-season, maybe late stage off-season, so due to go back to pre-season. And Pine Soccer Club used to have this Rangers Charity Day, and it was basically to raise funds, a bit like the Steve Wallace Cup, for the Royal Children's Hospital. So great, get invited to play in that. Some really good players, past and present players playing in it. So I accept, and cut a long story short, I went to tackle this guy who was a little bit bigger than me, and blocked a shot, and he missed the ball and took my leg out. And this is where it gets funny, right? Because you assume at the time, you were talking about before, get off the physio bed, be tough. So it's the same principle. I've heard a big crack, but then I look down and my shin pads burst, and that's snapped, and that's in 2 pieces. So I'm on the floor going, there's something not right here. This feels a bit weird. There's a bit of pain going on here, right? Not to act tough now, right? But this is my thought process. I'm going, what's going on? And my mum at the time, parents are going to love this, because I reported them to Child Services after this. Hear this story, it's mental. So I got carried off the pitch. I'm in the showers, and this is the old Pines. God knows why they played it there at the time, but it was a big day. And I'm in the shower, and I've got these crutches, and I'm going, wow, this feels really weird. But anyway, toughen up, put the gear on. And my mum was the marketing manager for Sydney Swans at the time, and they had a big function in the city. She was running the show, and we were going as guests, my dad and I. And so I get out, and there's this photo at home. I'm getting out of this taxi, suit on, crutches. Right? I remember them, blue handles, the lot, right? None of these, like, good ones. Old, you know, the ones that go
yeah, the ones that go, yeah.
Right? So I'm getting out, and these things are slipping over the...
You've not been hospital, you just...
I haven't been to hospital, right? It's a bit crazy. Yeah, it was scary. So, but none the wiser. So I go to this function, and I'm sitting there with my leg on the chair next to me, eating this, you know, whatever it was, blah, blah, blah. This event's going on. All the players are coming in. It's a proper gala ball. There's about 1,000 people there. One of the biggest hotels. I think it was the Grand Hyatt in the city, something like that. I'm sitting there chilling, taking the pain relief, going, this is weird, right? And then that night, we had a hotel room. Parents are next door. And I'm lying in the bed, and I must have moved in the night, and my leg slipped off the bed like that. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm in excruciating pain, and I'm trying to lift it up. And then basically I'm trying to get the, lean over and get the phone to call next door. Mum, can you come in and help me? And she's like, what are you talking about? I had to come inside to my room to lift my leg back into the bed. So cut a long story short, the next day, really long story short, the next day is the AFL Gala Day at Albert Park. So I'm sitting in my dad's car. We've put the seat all the way back, and I'm sitting there still no hospital. My legs like that, biggest quads I've ever had in my life, a bit swollen, and I'm going, yeah, right, okay. Get home, bed, painkillers. I'm just thinking, it's just a knock.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a knock. Go to school the next day, and I had a 2:00 appointment at the GP for an inflammation of the bursa in my right knee that the club physio had told me to go and suss out. It was sort of a bit flary, so I had a 2:00 appointment with the GP. So I left school at lunchtime, and I'm going, Dad, I'm in pain now. This doesn't feel good. Legs purple, the lot. I remember I walked into the GP and I had my school pants on. And I went, yeah, before we start with this bursa, can you look at my leg? I took a knock on Saturday afternoon, 3:00, blah, blah, blah. And he tried to roll my pants up, and he couldn't get them up because my calf had exploded. So he's palpating my leg and doing it, and he's like, what's going on here? And I went, so he had to tear my pants to have a look at the leg, and it's massive. And there's discoloration and stuff like that. Next thing, I'm in an ambulance getting taken to Frankston Hospital. 5 days later, that night I wake up with about 15 people in the room. I'm bollock naked. Right, I lift the thing up, I'm bollock naked, and I've just got this plaster cast from my hip, the thick old ones, from here to my toe. And I wake up in the room and what's going on here? Scotty, you broke your leg. Yeah, my tibia was basically like that. So, 2.5 days of chaos, not knowing, and maybe it's a mentality of just putting the pain to the back of the head and dealing with it and thinking everything will be okay, but a good lesson. But once I was able, straight on the internet, Child Services, got a bit of compo. Parents in trouble. But that was good fun, mate. Stilted the football career to a perspective of spent 12 months training, mate. I was in plaster cast for 6 months. So, you're going there and you think, day's the day, get the cast off. And sure enough, we put another one on, just lighter.
And I know you look at that and you go, yeah, great opportunity to go and study and spend your time doing other things to be productive. But Scotty, at that age, it would have been very easy to go, world's against me, fuck it,
brutal,
and not be productive within that time. So, did you concentrate on studying and?
Yeah, I don't know if it was automatic. I don't know if it was a case of. I'm sure I can't remember now, but I'm sure there would have been moments where I'm like, doomsday. This is a shambles, right? You've gone from training first team, you're playing in preseason games with them, in the lead up to it, and then the back end of the season, you're in around it. Never in match day squads. I'll just make that clear. But into intra-club matches, you've been observed, and then for it to be taken away, and then listen, the road, it's like this tunnel, and you're like, I'm miles away.
Yeah.
And they used to give me weights when I did get back and doing my rehab, walking up and down the stairs, and do the whole stadium 10 times every training session with weights. Activated my glutes and quads and stuff like that. So it was a long way back, and you're right. Probably at times it was like, wow, what's going on here? But serendipity, who knows, mate? All that energy of 4 or 5 nights a week down to Gippsland. It's an hour and a half drive each way. I turned my room into a something like this in a sense of just a study room, and I just went for it. Studied hard, got a TER enough that allowed me to look at universities as options, and that helped me. It really did.
No, that's class. When you were doing the weights and walking up the stand, is that at the Falcons one?
Yeah,
that's a big stand. That's a lot of steps, isn't it?
Yeah, I hated it. I could tell you every facet. I could tell you where the chewy is, where that's there. I spent 6 months on that thing, just walking.
Yeah.
And Jeff Hopkins actually took over the club after Stuart Monroe. And Jeff's obviously now at Melbourne Victory, so we still laugh about those days when he's taking training at the end. But you feel, one, so small but so far away from it. And we all know that age bracket is pretty important for next. You're like an asset, and there's always someone else coming. So you've got to be ready and you've got to take it. And a setback like that, I never look back and go, what if? We'll get to it later in my experience overseas, but the stuff I did overseas and not having the pressure of being a footballer, and not the pay packet either, which would have been cool, but the exposure to top-level players and joining in and training, it's almost like mediocre career in the NSL, or the gaffer throwing you a bib when someone pulls a hamstring and going in the 5-0s for 10, 15 minutes at a Premier League club. It's like, I'm going to run around like a clown. Probably won't get a touch, but wow, who's this and what's happening here? It's like pinball. So I'd probably almost go, I'm going to forfeit the mediocre career in the NSL/youth league and take that. because that's ridiculous.
100%. Like you said, we're going to get onto that and the players and the managers that you've worked for and, spent time around. Just for those that don't really know the leagues that well, the NSL was the top league.
Yeah, that was the NSL. Some amazing players there. My brother-in-law's both played there as well at South Melbourne. That I grew up in that. So our youth league supported that. So you can look at Melbourne Victory, West United, Melbourne City, how they play in your division now. They used to play in the national youth competition statewide, and the winners used to play each other states. It was a fantastic breeding ground for young players because not only were you really close to the matchday squad if they needed you, you were basically the reserve squad. But you'd be playing as curtain raisers before big NSL games. One of the famous ones at Bob Jaden Stadium, Lakeside, we played after the semi-final of South Melbourne and Sydney Olympic, I think it was. So we were warming up and there's still 12,000, 13,000 people there.
That's unreal.
And then they go, there's another game and they stay. So, they petered out, but the exposure to atmosphere was there, whereas I don't feel that's there now for young players. And we're expecting them to be ready for A-League football, but they're playing in front of 3 men and a dog on a Sunday night, for example. The energy's not right for where they're going emotionally, and they need to be ready for it. So we were prepared for that because we would play in front of crowds as curtain raisers.
It's a clever system because it's very, very different, isn't it? Playing where they're playing now, and then, for instance, you get called up, and where you're going to is just it's a different ball game essentially. Yeah. Everything, the pitch, the stadium, the crowd.
You feel attached to it, right? Because not only you get to the ground, that match day buzz. So you get to the ground for a youth team game 4 hours before the main game, but there's people around. There's operational staff around. You're getting a sense that there's an event here today. You play your game, and then by the time you finish, people are rolling in. Final whistle goes. You're like, this is good. But more importantly, you feel collectively engaged with the first team. So you stay and watch. And then after the game, you'd have a big match day function where everyone would eat and people would be up having interviews, and you're sitting there amongst the senior players and the sponsors and the families, and that exposure to it, you wanted to be attached. You wanted to be attached to that program. Whereas now I see a detachment, and it must be challenging. You're an A-League player. You train at a different venue. You play on different days. How close are you? Whereas we were trained on the pitch next to us. So whenever you needed to be called up, quick, your hand was up. I'm in. And you're getting called up. But you had the match day experience, which was great.
So you've broken your leg, you've done your studying. I can't wait to give your dad Doug some stick about the broken leg when I see him as well, by the way.
You know what? 50-50 split. Give Mum some stick as well.
Done.
Thinking, the motherly connection, she didn't feel at that time. Her instinct's usually pretty good, by the way, throughout my career or life. And she let me down there big time.
I'll give her some banter when I see her.
Big time, mate. I heard about you.
That's it. I believe you went overseas to visit family at 21.
Yeah, that was good.
And then you got a love for England, is that fair to say?
Yeah, so being an only child, very fortunate and grateful that my parents took me overseas a few times growing up. So I had been exposed to travel, which was great. And obviously my parents are Scottish as well. So going overseas and reconnecting with family was always pretty important every 2 or 3 years. And we did that. But as you just mentioned, it was 21. That was my first time. I think I just graduated from university. It was my first or second year in. Took the opportunity to go over, see family. And I think I spent 3 weeks, obviously Scotland, England and Spain. Connected with family and obviously just live that life. But there's nothing better. You're travelling by yourself. Yes, you're connecting with family. But from my perspective, that was my first step out of the bubble, which is Melbourne, into London, which is one of my favourite cities, if not my favourite city in the world. And just went, wowzers, what is possible in this city? It just felt the energy of, oh, mate, what is going on in this joint? Like anything felt possible. And what was about to happen, I had no idea. And dreamt of it, but couldn't really attach to it. It was just like, I'm in this city, everyone speaks different languages, how cool is this? What's happening? It's busy. But there was an appetite to go back in some way.
I guess this is the best bit about sitting with people and doing podcasts. And like I say, Jay gave me some stick doing research on you because he's like, Scotty, it's like,
yeah.
But when you look, and I knew that you'd worked at Fulham, I knew how long you'd been there, I knew the players you'd worked with and all the nice bits of that. But what I didn't know is how it come about that you got a job at Fulham. And I think the important thing, and the bit that I love about your story is that talk to us. Tell us all about how you first went into Fulham and what you were doing when you first went there.
Yeah, I think this is really important. Not only my story, but coaching all high performance staff. It's not an easy road to get into. It's very difficult. It's very transient, right? But I feel you've got to give a little bit, right? And in a sense of, right, this is me. I'm going to work for free for a little while. You're going to value me because I back myself. And that was probably my strategy. It was very like, wow. I called maybe 4 to 5 football clubs, of which I think 2 got back to me, right? First one was Aston Villa wrote me a lovely letter because back then there was no LinkedIn. I was writing hand letters from Melbourne. And this is my biggest learning because when I got there, I used to get people emailing me every week, probably 50 a week from Australia going, oh, how do I get in? Can I get a job? And I always said this thing, get over here, come and see us. And that was my biggest lesson. Once you get in front of people and you demonstrate your knowledge, your skill, your energy and your passion for it, they get a feel for who you are. So 2 people got back to me. Aston Villa said, yeah, you're brilliant, thanks very much, jog on. And then the other one was a guy named Martin Pert, who was Adi Boothroyd's assistant coach at the time at Watford. So I caught 3 or 4 trains out, and they actually trained next door to Arsenal's training ground at the time. And he was awesome. Martin Pert was the first person that invested his time and knowledge. And he was young. He came from a similar background, i.e. sports science. And he said, yeah, come along. I'll meet you at the Waterstones bookshop, I think.
Yeah.
Watford Junction. So I get the train up there. He hasn't even invited me to the training ground yet. He's doing like, you all right vibe?
Sussing you out, yeah.
So I remember going to Starbucks. The Starbucks coffee was inside the bookshop. And I said to the girl, I said, listen, I want your biggest cup of coffee. And when you see that empty, you come over and fill it up, right? And I'll pay you afterwards. And she's like, why? I said, that guy there, I need to pick his brain for as long as possible. Just keep the coffee coming. So the coffee's, and he goes, this coffee's never ending, mate. Like, he's buzzing. He's had about 3, the big soup bowls, he's like that. He's covering his face and stuff. So I spent hours with Martin and grateful for his acceptance. And then after that, he goes, all right, come in. So, you're on the train spending a couple of days at Watford watching training, and they're a Premier League team at the time, but they're a lower ranked team. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to sit my laurels, Rogan. It's important that I keep contacting and building the network. What people don't know is this. Mate, the Aussie dollar was shambolic. So imagine working for $1 and getting 20 cents back at that time, right? So 20 pence. Yeah. So I'm going, I'm getting destroyed here. So I thought, you know what? Fortunate enough, my cousin had a beautiful house there. She goes, come and live here for as long as you want. Rent free, don't worry about it, all good. But I said, I'll be broke in 5 minutes. This is shambles. So I started just working random jobs. I did it for 3 months. You're talking, in trucks, scaffolding, building sites, all stuff. Because I was just like, I'm not going home broke because it's so expensive to live in this city and the transaction from exchange rate is so poor. So I was doing all sorts of carry-on jobs, right? And it was the most motivational time because I was sitting there going, this isn't me. I'm not doing this for a living. No disrespect. My dream and my passion is to make it at this level. This is what I'm here for, and it actually drove me to do it. So at night I'd call people. No one would answer, blah, blah, blah. And then this is the pivotal moment. And sometimes in your life things just open. I called Fulham Football Club, bluff, total bluff. How you doing? Yeah, listen, I got to speak to the head of performance. Yeah, who's this? Scotty Miller, sounding all important, just bluff fest. And then did the research, complete bluff. Yeah, I know, all that type of stuff. And then this guy comes on the phone. It's an Australian accent. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? So I'm going, leverage
100%.
And the difference is this, rather than asking for anything, I asked, I want to meet you, I want to buy you a coffee, I want to learn from you. They were the 3 key things. So I didn't demand access, I didn't demand a job, I didn't tell him how good I was. I was completely humble in a sense of, I just want to learn. Is that an option? And I was meant to meet Steve. I was meant to meet him. I live life like that in terms of an omen and understanding timing of things, right? Because I met him and I went in and I swear to God, within 3 weeks, it was mad. I'm in the next day, starting pretty much. Meeting with him, coffee in Wimbledon Village. The next day, come in, 8 o'clock, see you in the morning. I'm taking fitness testing with Brian McBride, the captain of America. I'm with them in the morning. And then I'm coaching the under 12 and 14 team with the coaching staff at night in the dome in the middle of winter. So I was like first team during the day academy at night, this whole spectrum of connection with Fulham players. I've got a trackie. I'm like, got my locker. I'm like, I'm working for free, expenses covered, but I'm going, what's going on here? This is phenomenal. And you just grow from there. And then it was a real pivotal moment because the department was heavily made up of Australian people, and one got headhunted to join Graham Arnold at the Asia Cup. Get this is class. So probably about 3 months into the job, we've done a pre-season, less than 3 months actually, probably 6 to 8 weeks. I'm on a first-class flight to Hong Kong for the Asia Trophy. We're staying in a hotel with Liverpool, Portsmouth and South China. We're playing in this Asia Trophy in Hong Kong. My hotel room's the size of your house. It's off its head. I've got buttons that do everything in this room. That's on. This is on. Fashion TV. The TV's the size of that wall. I'm overlooking Kowloon. I'm going, come on. I've just flown first class, all paid for, and now I'm in the suite at the Grand Hyatt in Hong Kong, and Stephen Gerrard's living next door. You know what I mean? And I'm going, this is a wind-up. 3 or 4 days, sorry, it's a long story, but 3 or 4 days into the trip, my boss's wife gets sick. So I get this knock on the door at 7 a.m. Scotty, open. He goes, I'm going to have to go home. My wife's sick. You're going to run the program. What? So I've gone from being an intern, working for free, and within 6 to 8 weeks, I've got a week by myself leading the high performance program for a Premier League club in Hong Kong. Now I'm communicating with head coaches and dealing with players solely as opposed to the backup and the assistant to the head of performance. I'm running the thing. Under his guidance, i.e. knowledge and programming, but you're delivering. Oh my God, what's going on here? Yeah. So that's how it happened, mate. So
were you nervous or just buzzing?
Do you know what? I've seen photos back then. I belong there.
Yeah.
That sounds really arrogant, and I belong there, mate. And that was my belief. There was no fear of, who are you? I respect you're a footballer, but we're a team and I can help you and vice versa, but I'm here for the right reasons. One, it's to learn from you, to help your career, help the club, but I belong there. I had certainty in what I could bring, probably wrongly, and probably been accused of that all throughout my career, about that certainty I have, and it comes off the wrong way. But if you don't have self-belief in sport or as a coach or as a player, forget it.
But if you didn't have it in that moment, you wouldn't have done what you've done in the game.
No, of course not, because you just become another number and a servant to the game and compliant. I was highly compliant, very good employee. I was kept on at the club for 10 years, so I must have done something right, but firm belief that, I belong here. You might be a multi-millionaire and a Premier League footballer, but you know what? I'm going to learn from you. You're going to improve me, but I've got your back, mate. And I dealt like that all my career at Fulham. I'm here to make sure you're ready, whether it be as a coach or in the performance staff. And that's why my relationship with the players was so strong, because I'd call them out if they're not up to scratch standards, but they'll know why I'm doing it. So naturally you gravitate towards being the link man between the CEO, the head coach, and the performance staff. And that's how my role basically evolved.
When you're doing that, say you're pulling somebody up, like you say, they're on lots and lots of money, they're pro footballers. How do you go about doing that? Did you think, because I guess what I'm asking is, was player power in? Were you ever fearful of that? Like, let's say, not in a disrespectful way, but if you're trying to tell a footballer who's playing and earning loads of money their value to the club, if you upset them and they can then turn on you, or was it a culture?
A danger, but we had an amazing culture, and I know that's a big word and people always speak about it, but it was, Fulham's a special club, and I think it lost its way from 2012, maybe 2015. It lost its way a little bit, trying to overreach to get back to the Premier League as quick as possible, but it was always culturally a special place. So the accountability was, we're not a Man United. We don't behave like that. And it was quite interesting because Berbatov joined us from Man United, and you can only imagine the standards, the quality. More importantly, what people don't really understand is it's not just the quality at the elite level. It's the mentality and consistency. People ask me all the time, what is it? Oh, he's such a good player. I said, no, mate. It's his mentality to train at an unbelievable level every day, and tomorrow get up and do it again. And do it again. And if he has a bad game, turn up to Monday training knowing he's still a good player and have mental resilience to do it again. In a world where you can be sold like that, right? So in order, back to your question, knowing you belong somewhere is really powerful because players sense that as well. And what I learned from Premier League players, if this is a level of insecurity of you not knowing what you're talking about or presence on field, you're gone. And I saw numerous coaches arrive at the football club with high-profile coaches and assistant coaches that had nothing about them, no personality, and that's driven by psychological profile, right? So no dominance. You've got to play a role in the coaching staff. We're all dominant to a degree, but you've got to play a role at sometimes. And I've seen coaches come with big profiles with no personality profile that drives and inspires players, and it doesn't work. Whereas it was just maybe my natural tendency to get about it. There was a great one, Mohamedou Diarra. I don't know if you'll know him. You have to Google him. But
I know.
He was a captain of Real Madrid, and he joined us, but he didn't have his visa. And this is a great story because my sort of role was sort of hybrid, high performance and coaching. I sort of played in between the two, which meant I had some unbelievable experiences. So when we signed a player, and if they didn't go on international duty, the coach and the staff would say, right, you're going to X, Y, and Z with him for a week. Train him 3 times a day. Buzzing. Because I was hybrid. I could do gym, I could do recovery, I could run a technical session.
So you mean you're going away with that player?
Yeah, so international period when a team, and if you're not selected for your team, the club's got a choice. You train with the development squad in a small group, but generally because of the demands of the Premier League, they would say, go to Dubai, do what you want. So the first instance of that was with a player named Ida Gudjohnsen, Chelsea, Bolton, Barcelona player. So he's arrived at Fulham. He knows Mark Hughes very well. He's arrived at Fulham. Body fat, slightly high, boot camp time, right? So I get the tap on the shoulder, right, you're going to Barcelona for 10 days with Ida Gudjohnsen. All right, no problem. I get on really well with Ida, no drama. So we go there, basically living in a hotel just down the road from his house. He lives in Gaffer, or did at the time, where all the high-profile players live. And I remember the first time, I'm sitting at this restaurant. The first day we arrived, we do a hard session in the morning, and then we're sitting at this restaurant right on the beach at Gaffer. And then Messi and his dad get out of the car and walk into the restaurant and give Ida Gudjohnsen the double kiss and the big hug. And it's like, hey, how you doing? Shake hands job, right?
Messi?
Yeah, because he's playing for Barcelona at the time. So what do you got to remember about the culture of Barcelona during that period? Once you play for Barcelona, you are in. And there's a famous restaurant in Barcelona that they have silk slips with your name and number, and it's like a shirt. So whenever you arrive into the restaurant, right, they see you coming, you make a booking, that slip goes on the back of your chair and it's your number and your name because you're a part of heritage and history as a Barcelona player. It doesn't matter if you're terrible. If you're good enough to play and put that shirt on at this restaurant, it's like the club restaurant that a high-profile person owns, you get that respect. So I'm spending 10 days, and there are 2 instances of these stories, so I'll jog on a little bit with the story, but I'm training Ida Gudjohnsen, right? We're walking through Barcelona, and it's chaos. Like, he's a superstar, right? He's 6'4", legend. And it's like, okay, that's Ida Gudjohnsen. I treat him like a human being. We're going to his son games at the Barca Nou Camp on the Sunday afternoon, sitting on the grass, watching his kids playing. All the players, as you know, they're sitting there. And that was my first experience of that sort of, elite personal training, so to speak, i.e. coaching technical, tactical, physical, psychological stuff for a player in his hometown during thingy. And the second one was Diarra, who was an absolute different level of a guy. You're talking with a legend of Lyon and Real Madrid. We're sitting in Paris one night and his phone's blowing up. It's David Beckham. And then, these moments in your life where you're like, I knew you're good, right? But David Beckham's just calling him, right? And we're sitting having this beautiful beef and cold red wine in Paris because he was waiting for his work permit. I'm having it off, mate. I'm in this 5-star hotel. We're training at the PSG training ground 3 times a day. He's buying ridiculous dinners. We're sitting at unbelievable restaurants and having it off. And, I sometimes forget these stories. That was a level I was working at and the player I was working at. So their level of self-belief and confidence rubs off on you. Because if they're trusting you, you've got something about you. So I ran with that. Always ran with that.
You must have wanted to send a picture to Aston Villa now. When they said, yeah, cheers, but no thanks. And then you're having dinner with Gudjohnsen, bumping into Lionel Messi.
These stories I don't tell these stories. It's not a pat in the back and a wow,
No, I know that.
It's more of like I go, because I actually sometimes forget. I'm 42, right? Not that I'm old, but I'm in a moment of in the present in life, as you should be. So you almost, one, it's important to look back and review what you've done, right? Because I think you're always a circumstance of your current environment. And I think to a certain degree, Rogan, for a number of years, post-Newcastle, post-Aalborg, I probably forgot the level I'd worked at and the impact I had on certain people. And because the game can smash you, mate. The game can smash you mentally and physically. And, and it did me. I was exhausted after Newcastle. But those days when you think of those stories, you're like, wow, how good was that?
And even the side of it where it's your role at a football club to take Ida Johnson. I remember Ida Johnson clearly growing up watching the Premier League. Right? Techers, touch, what a player. But for you to have that as your role, that's your job, to go and train someone of these world class players. That's it's pretty impressive. It's unbelievable, huh?
I think it was more, it wasn't my sole role. My sole role was operating in the team, functioning day to day. But, I think personality is a big thing, being able to connect with players and have fun with players and know that your skill set's sort of divided across numerous areas. I wasn't just pigeonholed in the fitness, so I could deliver a technical session as well, and I grew into that. That was probably more so on the back of Roy. He sort of started to empower that into me a little bit as well. So having that flexibility to put on a session, and as a player and as a coach yourself, that players connect with people that can articulate a message clearly and it reflects the game. And if you can do that to an elite footballer at Premier League level and they see value in it, well, you're a mate. And, it's a privilege to call a number of these guys mates and be able to grab a text and check in at Christmas time and stuff like that, because we all played a role in each other's lives, whether or not we get another 2 or 3 years out of Ida Johnson's body, from my perspective, to get Mohamedou Diarra a work permit, to keep him fit, to get him playing for Fulham in the last stage of his career. They're all brilliant stories. But these players are the best, mate. Their energy's a joke. And to work with that level of intensity every day and drive, it's infectious.
Talk to us about Dimitar Berbatov, because I know that there's this image around him where people would probably, no one questions that he's a phenomenal player. Touch is ridiculous, technically unbelievable, but he comes with this because of the way that he plays, and his aura is that he could be labelled as lazy or doesn't put it in. Is that true, or was he technically that good that he didn't need to focus on that side? What was he like working so closely with him?
His style is driven by philosophy. His style is driven by his philosophy of what football should look like. And if you follow him on Insta, God, he's funny. When he first got on Insta, I don't know, when you go back, you'd have to scroll because he's huge, obviously, right? And he was new to Insta. And what he would do was he would clip his own videos and do like an overlay talk. And he would start, yes, people, right? And he would do this. And this is how he talks. He's an absolute legend and a funny guy.
Is he really? Yeah.
Mate, his sense of humour is cutting. It's hilarious, right? But he's filming, he's got these videos, he's editing it and putting it and publishing it on his own Insta, going, yes, people. That's his thing. He'd walk in the morning with his wash bag, looking like the Godfather. Same clothes every day. Black jacket, leather jacket, jeans, boots, bins on, dominate. Presence, ridiculous. Yes, people, I'm about to take this player on, and watch this top corner, no doubt. This, you go into his videos, right? Yeah, and he talks about his key moments in games and he narrates it. So in that way, you start to see his personality. Very dry, his standards are very high, but I always got on well with him. But, his expectation of Man United to Fulham, and yes, they play in the same league, but let's not beat around the bush. The level of player is upper level again. So he came from Man United to Fulham, and there was a noticeable difference. Not in work rate. In training, this guy would play as a sweeper in 5-a-sides and take the piss. And Martin Yeo would be like, Berba, go striker.
Wait, just go sweeper, just start running the show from there.
He'd just play sweeper, get it off the goalie's feet, 2-yard, a little roll, give it here. What are you doing? Stop playing. Give it here. And you just pop, pop, little pops, little outside the right foot, top binzels, taking everyone on. Not a dribbling player, but vision. And do you know how big he is? He's a giant. Like, I swear, when I first met him, he walked in to do his medical. Hey, Berba, And the VMOs on this guy, his legs are huge and he's 6 foot.
Really?
6.
Yeah.
He's a giant.
Is he really? Like, his legs are big in that, yeah.
Giant.
Yeah.
Like dwarfs me.
Right.
Me. Tall.
I knew he was
big.
tall, but I wouldn't imagine him like...
lower limb.
Right.
When he was at his peak, like his legs, you couldn't get the ball off him. But phenomenal in training. Some of the stuff, you look at moments in his games, the stuff he used to do in games, it's like the crowd would stop. I remember there was a famous moment, he probably put it on his Insta, he loves it. John Anarisa zinged the ball from left fullback, right to the right, and I don't know if you've seen it.
I know the one.
I think we've spoken about it at the cottage, and I'm sitting right in front of it, so me to the camera away, and the ball's zinged, and John could hit a ball. Like his passing range was a joke, and this didn't have to move, and you know it, and we don't need, and people at home won't understand it, but he just stopped dead, just put his foot on the ball.
I know
I'm getting ready, I'm going to pull it down, and the crowd stopped. The crowd stopped, and then everyone got a round of applause for an action, a football action, not a goal. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
He was magic. But the most professional athlete you'll come across, ice bars, cryo, standards beyond the belief. But don't sit next to him on a bus. What are you doing? My seat. Piss off. His sense of humour was brilliant, but if you had no balls about you, you'd think he was an arrogant bastard. But try and join him for breakfast. He'd have the newspapers everywhere, and he used to put his food on all different plates, meat, veggies, and everything was separate, and he would, so it's slightly autistic, but that's the way he used to prepare. So he's ticking box, and if you tried to join him on the table, what do you do? Get off this table.
He had his own table.
10-seater table. double paper folded out, 2 or 3 of them, looking through that, bit of chicken.
To be honest.
Bit of broccoli. No one had the balls to go up and see him.
If you've got newspapers and you're putting different plates, you're probably going to need 10 spaces.
And it's Berber. He goes, I need the space. Don't sit with me.
Did anyone try? Just even for banter?
Listen, people love to hate him because on match days, he'd deliver. Work rate, poor, but technical quality, ridiculous. Our culture wasn't that, though. Yeah. We were together. So that was the shift in recruitment from Fulham. We went from a team of Scandinavians and English that worked hard to a team of Mavericks. You start to get 3 or 4 Mavericks in there, and the defensive organisation shifts. The unbalanced accountability rises for the back 4, the back 6, and then suddenly people are fucking playing on high revs, and it changed the dynamic of the club, and hence the depreciation because the recruitment strategy changed.
It's important to know what you need at a club, isn't it, in order to...
It's identity, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think Langwarrin have done that really well over the 5 years to identify what works and what doesn't. And I said in the start that probably 50 or 60 players have come through Langwarrin in 5 years. And Jamie's got it to a point now that he understands, 1, the mentality required, and 2, who's going to fit in the group. And we used to say this, all right, trialists are going to come down. Let's see if they stand out like dog's balls. And the culture and identity at Langwarrin is so strong, in my opinion, that a trialist stands out like dog's balls if he doesn't fit. You can see it a mile away. His energy, his behaviour, his level of arrogance, his lack of connection with others. I've seen it. You stand back and go, he's not going to work here. And it happens every year when you have a few trialists down.
I certainly see that at Langwarrin. We've spoken previously, myself and you, about Danny Murphy. Yeah. He was another player that had come from the top level, played at Liverpool, won trophies with them. He's a different character. What was he like to work with?
You know what? Danny was a funny character. So self-belief, confidence through the roof. Like when you're rooming with Steven Gerrard and you played alongside him in midfield, you're not as good as Steven Gerrard, but you played a role to make Steven Gerrard a good player. So he knew his role. You look at his CV, Charlton, Tottenham, Liverpool. You put Tottenham and Liverpool on your CV, you've got to have something about you. In the prime years, right? Ridiculous passer of the ball, but more importantly, under pressure, give me the ball. Let me deal with it. Tactically very acute regarding game style, game management. Leadership, highly articulate. Hence the reason he works in the media now. I always thought, talking to Danny every morning, having a cup of tea with him or whatever, that he would have gone into coaching because he's got that tactical analysis brain. You talk to him after a game, and a lot of players can't compute the game plan straight after. He'd be sitting there going, yeah, that. So he'd have a clear understanding tactically of what's happening. So it's almost as if he's almost up here watching the game. So I always assumed he'd go into management, but he's smart. He's smart. He leveraged his profile, won his ability to articulate a message and tactical brain, and landed on BBC and radio stations, TalkSport and stuff like that.
TalkSport.
And he's happy. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's buzzing. He loves those roles. Danny, phenomenal player. Really led that team and gave us a real spine and authority of follow me, mate. Although I'm the captain, I'm going to want the ball anytime. I'm going to stick up for us at moments when we have to. And, that spine at Fulham at that time. You had Mark Swartzer in goal, Brett Hangeland, him through the middle, and Bobby Zamora right through the middle. All strong personalities, by the way, but complemented each other. There wasn't any bullshit. Who's more important? They complemented each other really well.
You mentioned Bobby Zamora.
Yeah.
I know that there's a funny story with him and his dog.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Bullard.
Yeah, that's a funny one. So Bobby is one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. And it's a shame that athletes feel they have to be a certain way. Maybe it's censored, maybe it's media training, but if only we saw, and there are a few instances, right, whether it be tennis, NBA, or even a few players in the UK at the moment are demonstrating a bit of the personality they have. I saw a video the other day of Gascoigne after they beat someone, they got to the cup final and he got interviewed, and he's I always joke about it with my mates because the clip is like, I'm going to get my suit measured.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. I know that one.
I pissed myself laughing. And then the next line, how was your start? Yeah, it wasn't bad, was it?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I know that's not, I didn't give it full ball. It's not the right time, right? But I find myself in the car going, right? Yeah. But what about the personality of him? Now, I know he's got his challenges off field, but wouldn't it be great to see that from players, more of a personality to it? Bobby off field is a ridiculous human being. Hilarious. But lived through hard times as well, mate. Scored nothing in the first year at Fulham and getting booed like you wouldn't believe. Like, booed. They made a song up about him that Bobby Zamora stands for Rose Ed every time he shot. So he was crucified first year at Fulham, right? But demonstrated the ability to rebound from that negativity.
He done a podcast. Yeah. He was on the Under the Cosh podcast, and he said he was talking about that time where he come in and horrible, said he weren't scoring. But he said how his role had changed because he was going in deeper to get the ball, but then his role changed to just getting in the box.
Target and link up, and then suddenly we found this guy, and it was like, boom, and he's a beast as well. He's a giant as well. People don't realise this, how big these guys are. Not all of them, obviously, but big guys. And he became target man. Boom. We had Angie Johnson, we had Dixon and Danny Murphy in midfield. We had real clear roles, Simon Davies and Damien Duff. This team, the Gaffer had them so clear on roles and responsibilities. It was pop, 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 and then he's just in the box, goal, and he started scoring goals for fun. Back of that, he got us to a Europa League final and got an England call-up. So right time, right place, right role, but fair play to him for coming back, because the mentality would have been, I'm out of here. They don't respect me, they don't rate me, get me out of here. The easy thing would have been, and I think it is in life, if things not going for you, there's a time where you have to hit the ejection. I'm out, this is not going to work. But having the balls to go, you know what, I'm going to turn up next year, get fit, mentally ready for it, and maybe speak to the Gaffer about adapting a role. And they did it, and it worked for him. But the crazy, you'll know Jimmy Bullard. I know Callum Goulding loves Jimmy Bullard. He was my first. So when I joined that 6-week period when I was doing my internship, he was my project. So I got given Jimmy Bullard to rehab him. Right? Didn't know who he was. But you know who he is. After one, you're like, is this guy normal? Like, I'm off the boat from Australia where the banter is completely different, and this guy's walking into a gym session with no top on, with his shorts underneath his underarms, pretend to be a sailor, and then all chaos going on in the gym. Wow. Dynamic fella. Ridiculous carry-on. I'm talking, I've never met, he's in top 3. Lunatics. Absolute lunatics. Cut a long story short, Bobby brings because Bob's obviously done very well for himself. He's got a big house in the east of London, out that way, only where his Essex, out that way. So he's got big security dogs, the not pit bulls, what are they?
German Shepherd.
German Shepherds, and he gives it the whole, and Jimmy was brazen. By the way, Jimmy's a phenomenal athlete, by the way. Scratch golfer, unbelievable fisher, unbelievable footballer, and a boxer. This guy puts his mind to it, can do anything. Just a mentality of perfection and everything, and once he sets his mind to it. But he didn't overcome the dogs because obviously this whole, I'll take your dogs, I'm not scared of dogs. I'll bring them in tomorrow. I'll bring the dog suit as well, right? So he's on the halfway line. Bobby's got them on the 6-yard line. He's revved them up, given them a little clip, and they've obviously got a password that releases the hounds, so to speak. So this is after training. So Jimmy's sitting there, shorts up, giving it all these ones, right? All that carry on, as he does. And he's released the dogs, and then sure enough, woof, hey, listen, Jimmy, go on ski, mate. Lost it. When you got 2 German Shepherds coming deep, found it, and they launched themselves at 20 yards, woof, and Bobby's just casually making his way up. Yeah, he's still scared. Leave him for another 10 seconds.
Has he got the suit
Yeah, he had
on?
the whole man suit on, like the bomb squad type thing. Yeah, the whole thing on this, going for him.
So Jimmy Bullard's just got 2 German Shepherds hanging off him.
Shitting himself. Yeah, and he had his long hair at the time. And then afterwards, because he's so funny, he's like, Adam. I'm not scared. All that type of stuff. But one of the most dynamic characters you'll ever meet. And that was my first player I worked with one-on-one, Jimmy Bullard. Got him back from his ACL. And another one, him and Danny were very close and ran the midfield in my first year there. But, you know what? We're sitting here talking, and football's made up of a great sport, but the characters you meet are the best.
Well, Jimmy Bullard, what a character to meet first up.
Yeah, the first one, and that was like a roller coaster because he was going through such a hard time in life. First big injury, ACL. Yeah. What people don't realise about an athlete is, although they're earning a lot of money, it can be over like that with a career-ending injury. And their only earning potential generally back then, before social media and sponsorship to the level it is now, was service-orientated, i.e. you play, contract, you get remunerated. It's a bit different now. You can leverage your brand. So it's a scary time for players. But, he was amazing to work with, and not the most professional, but unbelievable. I remember we were in Korea, and he went missing, and the fitness coach was taking a fitness session post-game. And I walk in, and the fitness guy said, who's meant to be on that treadmill? It's going at 32 k's an hour and no one's on it. And the 4 other guys are doing their conditioning session, like 4 times 2 minutes conditioning session. Who's meant to be on that? Oh, Bullard. I'll go and find him. And then I find him out the back on this rooftop garden thing doing Tai Chi with all the Korean women walking backwards with his shorts up going, wee, right? And you're looking at him from a distance go, what are you meant to do with this? Jimmy, come on, go away. I'm having fun, mate. Next minute, you get him back, treadmill, do the rounds because we had 3 groups. Do the rounds, come back, treadmill's flying again. He's gone disappearing again. I'm like, oh, my God, go and find him. And back in the day, you had that fitness machine with like a belt and they used to put it around their waist.
Yeah.
He's sitting there in the corner. He's got it around his ass with his arms up like that, just dancing away, right? And you think, what do you do? It's a professional athlete. And then on the flip side, we'll turn it on in a minute and play in front of 60,000 people and excel.
See, that is insane, isn't it?
He used to walk out in the tunnel. Give it to the bulldog. Down the tunnel. Bulldog's got it. Give it to me. Not scared. Off he goes.
Did he really? Yeah.
Belief, mate.
Yeah.
Like a swagger. He'd walk down the tunnel like you're walking past Ronaldo on this line. He's like, good one, son. Give me the ball, Old Trafford. I'll deal with it. Belief, mate.
Because we see it as football fans across the world. We watch him on Soccer AM. We watch him in times where he's allowed to be like that, if you like. Yeah. But to be doing it in a tunnel.
That was perfect for him, by the way, that job.
Unreal. Made for him, really.
But he lived by the belief that he was a good player. He backed it up.
He was on Golf Life with tubes and stuff, and they were talking about how he become a scratch golfer, and he was just... He literally... It stays with me. He goes... If you just want to get better at something, you just dedicate and just do what it takes to become the best at it. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, shit, that makes so much sense. But
we were playing Blackburn Rovers back in the day, and it was an away game. Up in that Lancashire, I think it is. Mm. Up there, you stay on these big golf estates, big castle golf estate, not far from Ewood Park. And we go for a morning walk, 10:30, breakfast, 10:30. Everyone would go for a walk, and then we'd go into a team meeting. So we're on this walk, and these guys are teeing up, and then they're looking over the shoulder, and we've got this Fulham Football Club walking past them. So they've stopped teeing up. They're like, oh my God. Jimmy just walks out of nowhere, goes to the guy's bag, takes out his one wood, takes the sleeve off it, throws it on the floor, goes over to his ball and just does a Happy Gilmore launch fest, walks up to it and just goes, woof, sends it right down the middle, doesn't even watch it. He goes, that's how it's done. Put it back in his bag and just kept on walking.
What did old matey do? Just like, I'll take that.
He goes, Jimmy Bullard just hit my ball, smacked 300 metres down the middle of the field. I'm going to take it.
Outrageous.
But yeah, that's the way he was. Purely eccentric and great for a dressing room. Never a dull moment. But try and get him to do something. Oh, my goodness, mate. Hopeless. Off the cuff. Do it when it matters, though, and that's a really important thing.
You know when he's meant to be on the treadmill, you go look for him and he's doing all that with the women. Is he on his own? Yeah. No one's egged in. Like,
and he's not doing it for anyone else. But listen, he was the one and is the one in the room. Like, I've got no doubt. Jimmy was highly strategic, right? Jimmy would be like, go on, Jimmy. Like, do stuff. Go and do it. He used to egg him on, right? Because they had this real close friendship. Go on, Jimmy. Go on, Jimmy. And he'd go and do it for lives.
Who would do that?
Murph. They were really tight. So it'd be a case of, go on, Jimmy. Go and do that, right? Things like that. So you got used to get egged on, but stuff that you do by himself as well. You'd find him in a room just doing weird stuff, and you go, yeah. But belief, I keep going back to that, mate. Young players without that level of belief. But aren't we stereotyped? We've got to focus all the time. Got to be ready. Got to do our activation. Yeah. We've got to be focused. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I'm actually, as I get older, I actually see the balance of the two, and it's completely individual. It's got to be individual. I'm not saying go out and have 10 bevs the night before either, but I'm saying if your natural behaviour is you get off having fun with your mates the night before a game, well, why do the opposite? And Jimmy was very much like that. Fun in the dressing room before, and then the minute the thing would go, he'd be on. He's having banter in the tunnel before they walk out. But then the minute the game starts, it's on.
And like you say, it's different for different players, isn't it? Some would have to switch on earlier.
Yeah. But we're driven to think we have to do that. Yeah. And I think some people do things that don't work for them. I even did that as a young player. I'd try new things like breathing techniques and have a stinker. And then I would go out the night before and have a blinder and then be overthinking something and be terrible. Yeah. So there was no real formula for me, but I always realised when I just prepared well and just did the normal basics well. But it is individual. But I think kids are really taught sports science, medical, and I come from this field, right? So I've got a lot to blame. A lot of blame to take as well about the intensity in which we put onto a game. But stress does no one anyone favours. So you've got to enter the game knowing your role, but ultimately being ready mentally, not stressed. And everyone's different.
I want to talk about one other player before we get on to managers, and I've got some questions to ask you in terms of the managers that you worked for, or worked with, I should say. Damien Duff, because I remember him. You know, I used to watch Chelsea a little bit when him, Robin, and that era. What a player. Yeah. What was he like as a character and a player to work with?
You know, it was really funny. We all knew who Damien Duff was, and I remember this. We used to train religiously at 10:30 under Roy. Always 10:30. I remember this day, the day before, we get this email. Training's turned back to 2 o'clock tomorrow, right? 2 o'clock. You've got, like, you're not there all day. We used to train in the morning. Staff are a little bit different, but I'd be getting home, have a block of Milka, have a swim, hit the gym, 4:30, boom, have a little siesta, and then up and have dinner. So it's not a 9 to 5 thing. Although you're working 7 days, it fluctuates. But I remember getting this email going, what's training changing for tomorrow? So we all get to training. Routines change. Players are in the dressing room going, fucking shambles. Training later. What we doing this for? Patterns have changed. Kids are... And then word got out, it's because of Damien. We'd signed Damien Duff the day before, but he was flying in and he wouldn't have got to training at 10:30 because his medical had to be completed in the city. So training was delayed in case he could or did pass his medical to train in the afternoon. And the story goes that we're all like, oh, is this for real? And Damien's a mate of mine, and I actually went, this guy better be fucking good. Like, this guy better be good, mate. Like, Christ almighty. I'm normally having a nap by now. But that was the narrative around the dressing room. Like, this is bullshit. What's going on?
Was it just the one day it had been changed?
Only one day, so he could train because it was in the lead up to the game.
Yeah.
I remember he was late coming out to train because he had finished his medical, and he just comes out and he's got this specific run. It's like quite flat-footed, but an absolute machine physically. And then he joined in training, and I'm going, is this for real? Like the speed in his movement patterns, double movement, triple movement for a simple passing practice. And you and I both work with players, and they feel the passing practice is the first step to warming up for the session. And I speak slowly deliberately because some people go through the motions, but it's game moments replicated in an unopposed perspective, right? And he did them so quick. I was like, is this for real? Like, I'm talking double movement, you're like that, you're dizzy watching it. It comes short, half turn, wrap around the corner first time, this type of carry on, right? Most boys would receive and play, he'd be like, see the next picture, round the corner straight away. You're going, oh my God. All right, yeah, training's no problem. We'll train at 2 o'clock tomorrow, like that type of stuff. No problem. Whatever this guy's doing, because he just elevated the team. Not only did he elevate the team, Rogan, but he's a lad. He's one of the guys, and forget what he and who he's played for and with. He just went right into that team and was one of the respected players immediately through work ethic and behaviours. And I say behaviours, so humble, crazy. Hated talking to the media. Hated it. Just too humble. No, it's not me. It's not me. I'll just do my job. Just a crazy mentality to defensive structure and organisation. I've got to help my team, mate. So it would be ripping fullbacks apart and then be charging back to double up to his fullback. Didn't have to do that. Some people bomb it off. Attack, you defend. No, not this guy, mate. Like, respect. And just a quick story on him. I remember I went to a birthday party one night and maybe three or four beers. It wasn't a late night, but it was match day -1 the next day, and we were playing Man United at Old Trafford. And he and I connected, whether it be my heritage or just personality, we connected quite strongly and always spent time together off field, and he lived around the corner, so we'd catch up for a pint and stuff like that, right? And I remember one day, he loved doing this drill. It was really simple. Just fizz a ball into me, pitch me up as a left fullback, and I'm just going to go by and do this little and cross thing. You should do it all the time. 4 or 5 balls maximum. And I fizzed the ball in and it was a bit off. And he went, come here. He goes, you been on the piss? And I went, what? He goes, you been out? And he called me out. He called me out on, and I wasn't even hungover. It was just fizz in. And right then, that was another reminder about I play a role, and a pretty significant role for that person in a cog of people, not just me, manager, assistant, all of us, that it takes a team to prepare him and this team for Man United tomorrow. And he goes, fizz it in like you mean it, like it would be game day. None of this bollocks, right? Wow. He goes, you've been out, fucking if I hear you've been out and you're hammered, I rely on you to prepare me for fucking games, mate. And I was like, wow. So that was a learning curve for me to go, right, professionalism extends well beyond a player. And I took that into my coaching career thereafter. Right moment, right place to have a beer, no problem. Nice dinner, late night. But to know people rely on you of that level, a group of people, you play a role. Don't fuck around, mate. Respect that role. Because when he's out there and he's scoring that little set piece that we worked on the day before, and he runs over to the corner flag and then he's running past, cheering to the bench, we all played a role in that, preparing him for that day. So that was a slap on the arse. It was like that. I was like, wow, that's accountability right there.
And we talk about what it's like in dressing rooms and at that elite level when something isn't right.
Oh, it's on.
People are willing to tell you, aren't they? Yeah. There's no pussyfooting around. They're willing to tell you. Yeah. Like even that example, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah, he called me out big time. My ass was slapped for weeks. I was like, wow, because the ego kicked in as well. What the fuck are you talking about? Are you joking or what? You're the player. But then it resonated around, no, we play a role in preparing you, right? But it went both ways. I expected the accountability, but I was always open with them. I said, listen, if that passing practice was off or if that possession was too small or the dimensions didn't work or the look and the feel of it, let me know because I need to know this stuff, right? So I was very open and transparent with it, you know, and we didn't get to the story about Mohamedou Diarra before we got sidetracked with the chaos of nice steaks and wine. But one day in training, he was poor. And I remember consciously or subconsciously, I don't know, but it was my role. I was leading the session. And it was about 20 players out there and the gaffers was standing over there and I was leading this session. And he wasn't good. He was poor. Positioning poor, awareness poor, passing quality poor. For his level, poor. So I think it was probably a whistle Tourette moment, you know, those moments. So you're burning inside. So as a coach, the ability to control your own emotions is probably the most powerful thing. If you can't do that, forget it. Because you've got to pick your moment when to interject and when not. And you don't want to go in there with your fucking, your steam because it needs to be concise, because then they just think you're a lunatic, you're an emotional wreck. So I just blew this whistle and just reminded him who he is. And, it was along the lines of, are you fucking Mohamed Diarra? And just challenged his ego and asked him the question, are you Mohamed Diarra? He goes, yeah, I am. And I said, well, fucking behave like it and act like it and fucking perform like it, right? And he and I had that time in France, right? So we were like that as well. And he came up to me after, he goes, Scotty, from Mali, I love you, but I know what you're doing out there. You use me as an example to drive the session. Good work, but don't fucking do it again.
Did he really?
Fucking laugh, right? So I was like, yep, got it. Took my moment. Shouldn't happen again. Won't happen again, right? And he goes, won't happen again. My knee sore today, right? But I was like, okay. So I got a slap and then had the ability to give a slap, but recognised the role that they hold you accountable, and it goes both ways. So learning early on of fucking blowing that whistle and walking in with presence and going, because it's a bigger picture, right? It's not that moment and a bad pass. It's a mentality of the group going into that game that we're fine-tuning, and that's what it's about. It's not that I think you're a bad person or a bad player.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine-tuning you so you are mentally ready to perform against Ronaldo.
What was the most enjoyable thing about working at that level?
Wow. It's a bit of a blur, if I'm honest with you now.
Yeah.
Imagine getting a paycheck every month, and everyone's going to go, oh, yeah, the money, nothing to do with money. Imagine getting a paycheck every month and not realising how many days you've worked that month, not caring if you've had a day off or not, and totally immersed in life in that world. Like, fortunate enough to go to work, not craving a day off. Fortunate enough to work in an environment that's so elite and supportive and driven that it just really aligned with who I wanted to be at that time. Aggressive, fierce, winner, learning. Fucking, I'm on, mate. I'm on. So I'll say that again, imagine getting a pay packet every month, not realising you've worked, and all you've done is learnt and absorbed and been around unbelievably talented, not only players, but executives and high-performance staff. Like, come on. And we had Harrods chefs cooking for us. And they did a rotation because the owner was Al Fayed, so they did this rotation through all these. So you're going up in the morning and eating a chicken breast with cashews and broccoli prepared for you. Walk in, hey, boys, yep, normal. So everything about it was exclusive. So what I learnt very early on was respect that exclusivity, respect your role, and work hard to stay there, mate. Don't cut corners. Don't cut corners.
At that level, you'd get found out.
Yeah, of course, and people do, and they'll continue to get found out because they think it's a jolly up. They can't differentiate between the banter and the seriousness of what it is. I mean, one position in the Premier League's worth $2 million. The prize money's huge. The sponsorship money's crazy. The players' salaries are mental. So it's not the players' fault that they're on $300,000 a week. It's the brand and the broadcast that's driving that. But they're only human still, and they need staff to make sure they're ready.
I know you said you had the belief, the self-belief, and we've spoken about how important that is as a coach, a manager, a player. Was there any times working at the top level where you're like, I don't know, felt out your depth or thinking, fuck, this is difficult? Did you ever get moments, Scotty, what I'm saying is, where you go, is this for me? Because I know you had the belief and you know that sense of belonging, but did you ever doubt yourself?
Does it sound really obnoxious if I say...
No, just be...
No, because I did a podcast about a month ago, and the guy was talking about imposter syndrome, and he sort of alluded to the fact of you must have felt that at some point in your career. And yeah, maybe at certain points, but it never got in. Like if it was a passing thought, it was only that.
Right.
Because I kept on looking for one internal belief, but also the external messages I was getting. New contract, pay rise, trips to Barcelona, to Ida, trips to France. So I was reading the messages coming in, and all the messages were, we trust you. And then you go, right, well, yeah, I'm growing, I'm learning. I'm not good. I'm growing and I'm learning. I think the narrative, it's important. I never walked into training ground going, I'm the best young coach in England. I'm one of, and I'm growing and I'm learning. But there's loads of me. And by the way, if I stop performing, I'm out the door tomorrow. And this is all a pipe dream. I'm back into Melbourne, coaching the NPL. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So the respect for the role is important, but also the understanding of, no, if you don't have that level of quality, you won't get in the door. And that's indicative with what I saw, mate, because, 7 managers brought in different coaching staff, all different coaching staff. And I became quite acutely aware of knowing who was going to last, who was going to sink or swim. You could see them. Just their presence talking to players, their ability to connect, dominate, the embracive support. You could just see it straight away. I won't go into any particulars about who and what, but you could just see who was going to really empower this group and get their respect. It's a feeling, an intuition, I guess. And
that, I guess that's more important at that level than it would be at a lower level, because you are dealing with Dimitar Berbatov.
Well, the coaching's the small part. It's the player management side. So if you look at a young player you work with now, their adaptation's very low, right? And the ceiling's there. So they've got a massive amount of growth, whereas these guys are almost at the ceiling. It's here. So it's all about managing, their personality, managing their body, and making sure they're ready, but most importantly, formulating a plan as a team and making sure that plan suits everyone's individual needs and it positions that way. And that's, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that year when we made the final, it was like, and everyone just clicked. But it was driven by, yes, coaching, but they were all brilliant players, mate. We weren't going to teach them how to do anything different. All Roy did was get them in a system that suited their game style individually, and it worked. So I think that's a big difference. Player development as a young player is different to working the elite level. That's why the transference of being a head coach at senior level is different to a development coach.
Yeah.
2 different facets, mate. 2 different facets. And when I see performance coaches putting winning aspects and pressure onto young teams in the NPL, I ask who they're doing that for. Do they want the win ratio to be in their favour, or do they want players to be better players at the end of the year through different playing systems, technical, tactical, physical, the 4 corners that we speak about? How you measure that's more important than the wins. The wins is the outcome, and the wins make you feel good, but can you play 4 different systems at the end of the year? And can you adapt to the opposition, and can you see the game at halftime to tell the coach a solution? That's education for a player, not winning 3-1, but playing shit. And at the end of the year, not knowing the difference between 4-4-2 and 4-3 and 3-5-2, which is a part of the game. Don't get me wrong. There's a science to it, but it's a simple game at the same time.
Really interesting. You work with a number of managers, and I'm going to touch on, you work with a number of different managers and their staff, and you stayed at Fulham for a very long time, which speaks volumes to anyone about the great job that you did at Fulham. You worked with Mark Hughes, Roy Hodgson, Martin Yole, and then obviously with Australia, and Postecoglou. Who was the most enjoyable to work for? And I guess one of the questions, having watched a couple of videos earlier with you speaking about your time at Fulham, all of them were different and had their different ways. What suited you the most, and what did you learn from those different styles, if you like?
Imagine having to move job to get a new experience because you've outgrown that role, right? The best thing about my role over the period of time was that through circumstances, some good, some bad, that the coach kept on moving. Now, people only think it's playing systems that change, right? But when a coach changes, not only does the playing system change, the recruitment changes, the communication style changes, the training style changes. So in that sequence of 10 years, I saw 7 different managers, right? None of them were the same. Everyone had ridiculous amounts of knowledge and strengths and were elite coaches, all of them, but led differently, communicated differently, held and designed training different, and had different game models. So I was in heaven, mate, because it was like being, as I said, getting paid at the end of the month, going, wow, look at this. What have I learnt? Sitting in tactical meetings with these guys who are elite players, first of all, and then become elite managers, talking about game style and how we stop and how we can play against other teams was amazing. The best thing about it was they all had an identity, whether it be a defensive organisation. The funny thing about Roy, he gets sort of, put in this pigeonhole that he's a defensive coach. I never saw him do a defensive session.
Really?
It was all attacking sessions within a shape. So our reactions to our attacking, it was all patterns of play. We used to do it every day. 8v6, patterns of play. So after an attack, the team was formulated into a defensive shape in an attacking mode. So the boys knew, where am I at this moment of the game is that. But we never did defensive sessions. Like, you're covering here, you're doing that. I can't remember it.
Really, yeah.
Attacking sessions, but our positionals were built upon what our attack looked like and then our active defence on the back of that.
So for those that are probably watching this that aren't as knowledgeable on football, is basically used to work on attacking and what you're going to do going forward. Yeah. But if it breaks down, you're in a shape to stop that. To stop them hitting.
Listen, it's going back when he was there, 2009, 2010, and 11 maybe, or 8, 9, 10. But I don't remember us doing like a 6v4, 4v3, back third type set. I can't remember it. It was all attacking pattern in the mid to front third, and away we go. And he would keep rotating the ball. It would be one ball in, goalkeeper out, play, and it would be set rotations and movements. But it makes sense, right? Because that's the game. That's the game model. And defensively, we're in our shape when we defend. And when it breaks down there, and we've actually got our game model or structure on the back of that. So he brought the tactical approach to it. Very, very A to B to C to D to E to F, goal. Bop, bop. So there were patterns in how we did it. And then I think Mark Hughes came in after that, and he was more physical element. So he was very driven on work rate and fitness. So the training went from static and attacking, very one-dimensional. And it was scary because the performance director at the time was like, our high-intensity body load has gone through the roof in training. So we had to really adapt the players' training loads, because training went from low-level intensity and topping them up with high speed after training to now it's, oh my God, handbrake. They're going to be fit, but the risk of injury in training is going to be higher, whereas with Roy it wasn't. It was like in the armchair. No one ever got injured. Right? We played 60 games in 1 year with 14 players. No one got injured, right? Because of the training load. Mark was just intensity, and more freedom. Martin Yole was a combination of the two, but started to be more flexible in rotations and movement, which impacted defensive structure, but highly creative and tactical. Like, he used to say, "You don't know, but I know." And I went, "How do you know if I don't know?" Like, question, like, how do you know? Have you asked me?
Yeah.
You have no. But he was a cracker of a guy, but more tactical.
Yeah,
more tactical. And then after that, there were a few guys, short-term guys after that. The impressive one at the moment is obviously Postecoglou, very similar to Mark Hughes in a sense that his sessions are highly intense. Like they're moving, mate. Like there's no rest. A lot of transfer games, a lot of support, a lot of pressing, which you could probably see from their game style.
Yeah.
But all about goals, all about attacking. But a ridiculous communicator and authoritative on the pitch. Like when he goes, it's like, boom, you get told.
As in if he's not happy?
His messages from day one, it's boom, certainty, belief, and strong. So once he's got a game model and a clarity of how he wants to play, the standards are set. There's no like, oh, we'll ease in. Boom.
Well, I guess him moving to Spurs, and there was the whole big thing when he went to Spurs, or is he a big enough name? This, so he would have needed that because he's obviously doing a great job there.
Talk about belief. He talks about his heritage a lot. He talks about his family a lot. Having known him briefly, understanding why he is a coach. It's his sole purpose. He loves it. He's unbelievable at it. The success he had, people look at his recent success. He's won everywhere, mate. My brother-in-law's played with him at South Melbourne, and they go, wow, hard as nails, but what a trainer. They call him a trainer back there. So he's had success everywhere he's gone, everywhere. And to feel that he parted ways with Football Australia, with the Ollie Roos thing.
Yeah.
Potentially a scapegoat. I don't know all the information, but limited time to prepare the team. Bad timing, bad players, bad cycle of players, and then ended up in the NPL, mate. 2012, I think it was. He was coaching in the NPL, Brunswick Juventus, and they got relegated and he got sacked.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, don't hold me on the dates, but it was recent history that he was coaching the NPL and it didn't work out for him. And his next job was Brisbane Roar after that. So what about perseverance and belief there, mate? You know, and if I remember it correctly, it was stopping the CEO walking out of Marvel Stadium at a game, knowing Brisbane needed a coach, and he went up to the CEO. I think this is a story, and he said, "This is who I am. This is where I am. This is what I'm doing. Give me a chance. Interview me." So he just pitched up to this guy, this CEO, whoever it was at the time, as he left the game, of which he was just watching as a supporter, and he went, "Nah, this is my chance." Authority, bang, got an interview, transcended Australian football with Brisbane, went in there with a clear plan, moved on the drinking culture, out, not for me, high performance, coaching, winning team, and listen, he hasn't failed since. And to work with him for such a brief period of time, and for him to call me and say, "I've heard good things, come and join me," is a proud moment. And you know, there's a photo in my parents' house where I'm standing next to him with the Australian kit on, and I've still got the trackie. And it's a proud moment because it's something when I was 24 I had on my goal sheet, work for Australia, and I've ticked it off. I won't do it again. I don't want to say never, but my ambitions have changed. So it's ticked. But he's top drawer.
It's an unbelievable achievement.
Yeah, well, it comes from people though, right? And it only came, Rogan, from working my ass off. And I always get asked this question from young coaches, high performance or whoever. They go, you know, what about my CV? And I go, oh, forget your CV, your snazzy thing on Canva or whatever, mate. Sponsored ad Canva. Forget that. That's one. That's a bit of paper. Qualifications, experience, one. Your strongest point in your CV is the players you've worked for. That endorsement, if you've improved them, respected them, and they respect your value, one as a coach and as a person, they're going to speak highly of you. And that was evident in my time at Fulham. I had 4 interviews with bigger clubs on the back of players endorsing me. So I almost joined Newcastle United. Alan Pardew, met with him, and that was on my B licence. This is how funny is this? B licence, Mark Viduka, Lewis Bowen-Morte, all of these big characters. It was with the PFA, so it was the elite players. I'm nobody, mate. I'm the only non-elite player on it because I work at a Premier League club. They've fast-tracked me. They're all sitting in this room, so who's going to do their session first? I've been coaching for 5 years, mate, or 4 years, on field. So it's like...
You're up, Scotty.
They've got all these top names. Shit themselves. Nah, I'm not going first. So then I just go out in the field. I'm holding the ball in one hand with one whistle here, just going... And I remember it was a 4v2, 4v4 plus 2, outside bouncers, little alpha goal type vibe thing going on, right? Bop, bop, bop. And that was my first exposure to it. Off the back of that session alone, 4 clubs, 4 phone calls. Arsenal, Newcastle United, and 2 other clubs in London. And it's like, wow. So I learned your exposures from your CVs from the players, not only just a bit of paper.
Yeah.
So be good at your job, work for people, make sure they respect you, and it works in your favour.
But there's a running theme with the people that we spoke about and yourself and the players and gaffers is self-belief, hard work. There's no real secret recipe to it, is there?
There's a formula, is there?
It is...
People buy into that.
Yeah.
One, they buy into your self-belief and confidence that, yeah, listen, he's not talking shit. He knows his stuff. We don't know everything, and we all make mistakes. I think that's a clear thing. If I did a passing practice at Fulham and it's not working, I'd be like, I'd bring a bit of banter into it. I'd blow the whistle and go, I've had a beast here. It's not working, is it, lads? Right, what we're going to do is we're going to work and move over here. I'll just call it out if it didn't work. And the players would be like, hey, they'd be giving me pelters. Yeah. But afterwards, they'd be like, good on you. Call it out. If it's not working, don't try and hide it. Because the players are sitting there going, shambles. Right? Then it gets worse. If it's not working, call it out. You know what I mean? So it's a good lesson. Just have an impact with the players, and that will come back and help you in the long run, for sure.
When you were finished at Fulham, I know that you stepped into a role with Newcastle Jets as head coach. Just before we get onto that spell, did you always know, or as you were working at Fulham, did you know that you wanted to go into that role or potentially do that in the future?
I remember, you know what's funny, Rogan, because you say things at times, and I'm a true believer. If you say it, you know, you're halfway there to doing it because you've actually got the balls to put it out there and your ambition to do it. You know, a lot of people write down on paper their goals, but if you start telling people what you're doing and how you're going to get there and you're working towards something, the more people that know you want it, the more they can probably support you with it. So I remember I did an interview with 442, a guy that was based in Europe. He flew over to London, did a few interviews with the Australians, and he did this piece for 442 Australia. And he asked me what's next. And I remember just going, I'll be a head coach. I was 29. He goes, my next step's head coach. I'm not ready yet, but I will be, and it will happen in the next 5 years, no doubt. I'm on track for it. Because I knew I was on track, because I was learning and my exposure, and you're getting closer to the manager. So that was my assumption of, well, the next step, if I want it, is that, because now you're the assistant to the main man, getting close to that role. I can see what it looks and feels like. I can control a group of players to a degree of getting them operating to a level, but only as an assistant. And then you get the call to move to sunny Newcastle, and then you take that role and you realise, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Doesn't stop, mate. Doesn't stop. Brutal job.
When you jumped into that role, did you really find out, wow, this is different to being an assistant?
Yeah. Straight away. Not being able to go walk down the street and have your privacy is one. Good, bad, or indifferent. Everyone's got feedback for you.
Yeah.
Telling you how good or bad the team was, or how rubbish you are, or how good you are, what you should be doing. That's one side of it. Two, the enormity of the job, that it never stops. So the life cycle of the team's always evolving. So a transfer window closes and you're already preparing for the next. European agents, phone calls, meetings. Your role moves away from just purely coaching. You know, not only are you leading and managing a group of players and staff daily from an operational standpoint, you're the figurehead of the football club from a commercial perspective. Yes, you've got a commercial director, but you're the key speaker publicly.
Yeah.
And it's so important to look after your own energy with that. And I'm talking physical energy, but more importantly, mental energy, because you feel isolated, you feel lonely, because there's no one really to bounce off, because you can't be really vulnerable to your assistant coaches or your staff, because they need to see a level of presence. That's something I learned. You can and can't be, but there's levels. There's a detachment of loneliness. There's a time in the night. Let's use this as an example. You know, that time of the night where it's like, yeah, the boys are having a good night. I'm the old fart in the room. I'm going to leave them to it.
Yeah.
As a 33-year-old, I felt like that a lot of the time, because listen, the team's having a good time after a game in Melbourne. I don't want the gaffer sitting in the corner anymore. All right, I'll go to my room. So suddenly you're a 33-year-old being a head coach, and you're positioning yourself that you're understanding other people's needs at that time, and you step away from it. But it's a brutal job. It's brutal.
And I guess the spotlight was on you even so, because you were like the youngest ever.
Yeah, listen, I was young, and I probably triggered a lot of people when I took over the role, because I didn't feel young. Because if you think about it, I'd been coaching for 10, 11 years. And I remember distinctly when I did join the national team, they had some great players there. But the day before, or 2 days before, prior to travelling, you're coaching unbelievable world-class Premier League footballers, and I turn up at the Socceroos, and you're coaching a handful of A-League players with the likes of Bresciano, Tim Cahill, and Lucas Neal and Jedinek, who are the elite players in the group. The rest of them were A-League players, mate. So I remember talking about belief and standards. I'm looking around at that training session going, this is slow. Where's the intensity? Professionalism, without question, phenomenal. The Australian ecosystem's known for that. It's known for professionalism and work rate. But seeing a deficit in quality.
The level, yeah.
So then me going, that's my level. So then trying to raise that as well. And Ange had to do that with the national team as well. So, yeah, the enormity of the job's huge. I've always said it, but highly rewarding, but mentally taxing. Like, after that first season, I was absolutely spent, cooked.
Did you know? So I know that we're going to get onto your spell in Denmark. You went back to being an assistant. Did it change your mentality of what you wanted after that, or when you got to the end of that Newcastle spell? Did you go, right, maybe head coach, because of all the things that are added on top of just coaching, just looking after the team? You know, you spoke about the commercial side and everything, and walking down the street, you got supporters that ultimately pin everything on you, want to give you your opinion. Did you get to the end of your Newcastle spell and go, maybe what I've been doing at Fulham is for me. I enjoy it more.
Oh, there's definitely an enjoyment factor that's different. I mean, I used to have a Vespa and have a helmet and a suit on and turn up at Craven Cottage and park out and walk in and, the assistant coach, like, come on. No one wants selfies every week with the assistant coach. It's the top players and the manager, right? Yeah, the occasional one will want it, but the incessantness in there. You're left alone to do your job, which is great. It's a highly rewarding job, but if you've got ambitions to be a head coach, you've got to go and fulfill it. That would be my lesson. You've got to go and tick that box and test that. Test that ambition and test your skill set out. It's hard to answer in terms of what it looked like long term and wanting to take that step back. But I'll be vulnerable and honest with you. I took Aalborg, one, because I thought it was a good option. I had 2 or 3 A-League clubs call me as I was in negotiation with Denmark. But if I'm honest, it was a bit of a to the A-League, because once again, I keep finding myself in roles where I need to build and create something. And through a transition of a club changing hands, from an ownership perspective, the vision changed and I didn't fit in that, right? And I was never going to fit in that. And I've spoken publicly about it a few times with respect to everyone. Sometimes people fit, some people they don't. And the vision changed and it didn't include me, no problem. It's best that we go our own ways. Happy days. But yeah, I moved to Denmark. Right job, wrong time. That makes sense, because I still had the hat on, senior coach, mate, head coach. Like, I went there and I was working with some senior guys, and I was basically planning training, running training, but not delivering it. So it'd be like setting the table, making dinner, and not being allowed to eat it, and then doing the dishes afterwards.
How does that work?
Because they knew my skill set. So I was all the periodisation, all the training plans, boom, 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 sitting there going, right, we're doing this today, this today, this today, this today, this today, and the gaffer would then tap in his tactical session in there throughout the week. So I'd do a weekly plan, monthly plan, manage all the training loads, implemented new gym programs, power, recovery. It was a whole high-performance assistant coach's role, right? From nutrition to restaurant, put a new chef in, the whole lot. It was a great role to sort of be transition the club to the next level, and that's why they brought me in, mate. It was, come in to take us and bring a little bit of that Premier League mentality in.
Yeah.
But when you're used to running a club, and then suddenly you're the assistant coach sitting second or third, and you're seeing things in a game going, yeah, any chance? Or seeing things in training that aren't quite acutely like how you like the training ground to feel, you become suppressed. So then you become a dragon, mate.
It's a frustrating...
you become a dragon. You sit there going, standards are poor. That's fucking rubbish. So then your mentality starts looking at what's not right instead of going, I'm in Denmark. Got a really good contract. These are amazing people. They're not quite at the level I've been at, but maybe I'll have an influence on it. So I got frustrated there because it wasn't moving quick enough. It was too pedestrian, and I actually spoke to the sporting director about 4 weeks ago, and we had an open dialogue around my experience there, and he apologised, because I had to apologise as well, because I rattled some cages there about the level of mentality and standards and quality.
So you were outspoken about that, what you thought?
For sure. Yeah, because he employed me to do that. But then when the facts were actually put on the table and I was holding people accountable, whoa, shaky time.
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable there. Champions League club, Europa League club, one of the biggest clubs in Denmark, brilliant facilities, one club, town, everyone's a superstar. And then some geezer comes in that finished 8th in the A-League, given it large ones, and they're going, you finished 8th. I'm like, yeah, I had the worst budget, and the club was in bankruptcy the year before, and it was a shambles, and we tripled the points tally from the year before. Have some context, you clown, right? So there was a bit of this going on, but we had a conversation around what that looked like. He apologised. He goes, I brought an English Premier League mentality to a place that wasn't ready, so I did you a disservice. They weren't ready to adapt to that level, and they never will be.
His vision was to do that, brought the right person in to do it. But actually, if you've got a whole team of people that aren't ready to do it, then
it was like a one-man band. And the cymbal here, I was playing that, and I was playing the guitar, trying to drive people in an intelligent way, like manipulation, positioning, education, trying. But then it was this like elastic band by boom, bang, getting on a bus, going to a game, and there's Coke everywhere and shit food everywhere. And I'm going, hang on, what am I watching here? But it gets back to my previous point, Rogan, about flexibility in prep. Back then, demon. Why am I seeing Cokes everywhere on the bus and Pepsi? What am I saying? What is this food? This isn't high performance. Calling it out. But now when I look back, I go, if it makes them happy. If it makes them happy.
And do you think they were a little bit blind to it just because they were the top dogs? Like you say, one club. Done. Yeah, what we've always done. Got away with it. Still a Europa League, Champions League, because
3 years before, done the double, won the cup, won the league. But it was the mentality of people in Aalborg. Now, you put me in Copenhagen, the biggest club in Denmark.
Yeah.
One of my closest mates was the head of performance there. Different mentality. The leadership was fierce. Stolar Solbakken, winner, driven, personality, do it, standards. Put me in there, thrive. Put me up there when it's all candles and hot chocolates and Chillmans, disaster. So I learned a lot from that experience as well. Yeah. Patience, understanding people. And I took that learning experience into Langwarrin. Initially rattle cages and then sit back. And Tanya will speak about this as well in terms of my first couple of months there. We didn't understand each other. I'm talking didn't understand each other about communication styles and desire and want, but we found a way to understand each other and grow the club together, But without Aalborg, I wouldn't have known. I would have just this way, and not taken anyone with me and influenced them positively.
It's really interesting how you say from every experience that I've asked you about, you've always learnt something from, which is really important.
I think it is, but subconsciously you do it, right? You would do it every day in work.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And in life, I think it's important that you remember it and what it is.
How did you go with the language in Denmark?
Listen, they speak like they've got a potato in their mouth, right? So it's horrendous. It was a lonely time. I'll be honest. I had a beautiful apartment. You've got to put it into context. I was the assistant coach on a very good salary. Not a Aalborg salary, so a proper salary.
Yeah.
So the expectation from me to deliver was there because I knew the accountability piece around my salary. So I thought I needed to prove that and make change instantly rather than looking at the term of my contract and go, let's just pad this out a little bit. I was like, maximum value of change needs to happen quickly. But not speaking the language is horrendous because you're in a team meeting and everything's in Danish. And then the coach is speaking to you in English afterwards. And then he started to speak in English to facilitate to include me because Morten Weghorst, the ex-Celtic player, was the coach. He's a class guy. So he wanted to include me. But when results aren't going well, it's easy for him to revert to Danish because he's basically facilitating one person in the room who doesn't speak Danish. It's not working, right? I wish I could speak it, but it's too hard, mate. And it doesn't travel anywhere. If you're going to learn a language, it has to be Spanish, English, and the bigger languages, not Denmark.
Yeah.
Not Danish. Doesn't make sense.
Nah, definitely not. Good experience for you to have, though, huh?
Mate, Denmark's one of my favourite places in the world.
I've been. Loved it. I was a kid, but I loved Denmark.
As a young footballer, I would steer any footballer with the ability from a passport to go and have an education there. The standard's good. The environment's good. The quality's brilliant in terms of football. It's Champions League football if you finish in the top 4. But what a way of life. 6 million people, great government, healthcare, pollution, and good people. Loved it there. I said to Alan 3-4 weeks ago, the sporting director, when he was there, I said, listen, right job, wrong time. You get me 2 years ago with a different mindset, go in there, Cuban cigars, let's pad this out over a 4-year deal. We'll marginally make progress.
And then eventually
I was angry. I built up Newcastle over a 16, 18-month period and then saw 10 years of work and aspiration and ambition in one phone call. Gone. So there was bitterness.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Of course.
Yeah.
Then you returned back to Melbourne.
Yeah, that was fun.
How did it come about that you become Langley head coach?
So, let me think, mate. It's a long time ago. So I returned to Melbourne after Denmark, family reasons. Had to be closer to my parents, and was based in Mount Eliza at the time. And I believe, from memory, they asked me to speak at some event, sponsors event, like they do every year. So I went and spoke, and Dougie Hodgson was the MC, I remember, and we just had, it was a bit like this conversation, 10 questions, chat, 30 minutes, no drama. And Greg Kilner, as I was leaving, bear in mind the last time I saw Greg Kilner, he was probably elbowing me in training, because when we were in the young youth squad / reserves, when we were 16, he was in the first team. Strong striker, and I always used to have to mark him and just batter me, like pick me up and throw me across the room. That was the last memory of Greg. Not spoken for 20 plus years. Hadn't spoken to Jamie, Pooley. Totally lost contact with all these guys. Not out of disrespect, just life changes.
Of course.
And I remember walking out of that room and Greg going, "You and I need to meet again, and you and I need to talk. Here's my business card." All right, no problem. So we didn't talk. It was quite funny. A couple of days later, I get a phone call from John Heskins. "Hey, Scotty, how you doing? Do you want to meet for a coffee?" Because I was living in South Yarra, Hawkesburn at the time, and his office is in the city. And just, it was quite funny. We met at the Young's pub, at Flinders Lane, Flinders Street there, the pub opposite.
Is that the one opposite the train station?
And I always used to sit in there, had a big window, used to watch everyone crossing over, get a pint, just sit in the window and watch the world go by. So I said, "Meet me there." So we met there. And he said, he was actually really quite forthright. He goes, "So, Gus is retiring. Do you want to be our head coach?" I think I almost spat my beer across the room. I was like, "Yeah, good one." And he goes, No, we're serious." And I went, "Huh? What?" And he goes, "Maybe it's right time, right place. You're in Melbourne. You've got an expertise. We want to improve things. We want to move the club forward. If it's something you'd be interested in, blah, blah, blah." So we have another beer or another coffee or something. And then this is brilliant. He gets his pen and paper out and he writes a number down on the hanky, salary. And I looked at it. I went, "Come on, is that a month? Right? Banter. Is that a month?" No, that's. I went, "Oh, come on, John, don't be silly." Right? Because you're operating at a different level. And what I couldn't quantify at that time was, listen, it's 2 nights a week and match day. You're employing a professional coach. It's all I've ever known and done. So you're not going to get a 2 nights and a match day coach. It's full-time coach, mate. Like, I'll be doing and thinking about this all week. So anyway, it was quite funny because I didn't know Greg was in on this. So Greg's a pioneer and very smart thinker. And I respect him a lot for what he's done for the club, but how he's helped me over the years as well. And I'm sitting in my apartment in the city and my phone's ringing off the hook. And he's obviously highly successful in his business. So he commands a bit of respect when he calls you. And if you don't answer, he just keeps calling. That's what he does. That's his tactic. So I'm like, his phone's calling me off the charts. Oh, far out. Okay, I better take it. Scotty, it's Greg Kilner. How was your day? Yeah, it was good. What'd you get up to? Not much. He goes, "Scotty, I know. What do you know?" I'm playing dumb. Because John said to me, "Don't mention anything to anyone."
Okay.
Right? So anyway, fast forward. "Scotty, I know. What do you know?" It's one of these ones. "You don't know." "No, I know. What do you know, though?" Carry on. "Scotty, I know you went with John today. All right. Let's meet. Let's talk about it. I'll give you my vision for the club and how I can support what we can do." And along with Tanya and all that. And we all spoke and then we came to an agreement and then it was a case of, right, listen, coaching staff, let's go, let's have some fun. It was a bloody roller coaster, mate. It's hard work. Respect to coaches that work in this space. Not only have they got family and they've got a full-time job and then they've got the ability or time that they need to invest in players to prepare a team. It's fucking hard, mate.
And watch other teams and prepare.
And more importantly, we talk about adaptation from playing style and quality. Kids, you can expect some form of inconsistency, but NPL 1 and NPL 2, they're part-time footballers. They might be very good, but they've made a choice not to be professional, whether it be choice or opportunity or best fit for them, for their life. And dealing with the inconsistency was the hardest. "Sorry, geez, can't make training tonight." "What do you mean you can't make training? It's a full-time job, mate." So I was attaching this to this is a full-time job. I don't care if it's NPL 2, mate. Full-time job. These are the standards. "Sorry, I can't make training. I've got to work late." "What do you mean you got to work late?" So Jamie used to be pissing himself laughing because I'm like, well, we started with 20 today. I've had 14 phone calls. Now we've got 12 for, we've got 8, 6, 7 for training.
And you're finding that difficult because you've worked at the top level.
I'm looking at accountability. Hang on. So I've planned a training session to prepare you and now I've lost 6 or 7 players. And you can't just go and get the reserve team because they're not good enough. Right? And it's like, wow. So once again, a learning experience around understanding the environment you work in, and it probably took me 12 months to adapt to that. consistency in commitment levels, quality in training, quality of understanding game style, planning, the whole package. But such a worthwhile experience though, mate, because I'm not sitting here talking to you tonight if I didn't do that. I'm not closing the cycle of my career as a full-time coach with my junior club if I didn't do it. Like, that song started from the bottom, now we're here. It's like, I don't know how I did it, starting where I did, and then I ended up back at my junior club. Pleasure and a privilege, but rewarding.
And even in that time, we touched on it right at the beginning of the podcast, but there was a lot of change and a lot of stuff that you, along with other people, but I know that you were the driving factor in using your experiences at the top level of implementing stuff down at Langy, which has really helped take Langy from being what, Langy's an unbelievable club, of course, but Langy was a state league club, state league team. Jay's been here a number of years more than me and said, yeah, Langy was always, I say just, but they were a state league level team. Now we look at Langy, and even in the time that I've been there, so a couple of changes even when I've been there has been, for instance, all the boards around the pitch that just brought it to life. The road, of course, the road leading into the ground. Yeah. I know that you had openly told us before that the car parks weren't car parks before. So in your time at Langwarrin, it kind of transformed quite a lot. And you'd mentioned it in team talks before, and I always, as a player now being in those talks, I always felt your passion for Langwarrin, and you and Skells, you are Langy boys, and I know what it's like to be a local lad of a club, and I'm like, shit, this is their club. So I personally bought into the whole journey, what it means. It really, Langwarrin is a club you love, and it's where you began. So what was it like going through all of those things? Because I guess there was challenges along the way, and I know that one of your biggest aims was to leave the club in a better place. And I mean, geez, from the day that you walked into where it was when you left is something that you can be very proud of, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you talk about Tanya's role there as well. Those early days, she's probably think I was a lunatic. I think every second word was environment, because I'm a firm believer that if you put all your eggs in the basket regarding player and your player budget goes into that funnel, that's a short-term gain. But if you actually look after your environment and your staff and over time build a successful team like we have, there's longevity, but also it covers numerous aspects of the football club, i.e. the grassroots community and the MPL program. So the facilities had a massive transformation. Maybe just talking about environment and speaking home truths about the level of the environment when we first arrived there really inspired others to have change. And it wasn't just solely me. It takes open discussion and dialogue in order to inspire people to do it. But I think a lot of people, and key people that is, not a lot, sat there and went, opportunity, let's leverage this, let's go with it. Opportunities through grants, opportunities through the council, let's make this work. And I don't care who and what causes and the identity we've got externally. But I do know from an environment perspective, it's brilliant for the level. I know that the players are looked after to a higher level than most clubs, because I know this for a fact, that when we attempt to sign players, they talk about how they've been treated, and we make assurances and outside of performance, because there's an accountability there, but outside of performances that they'll be treated a certain way. And if you live the values of the code and conduct, you'll be respected. And that's all we could control. The stuff on field, Jesus, would I have loved to have been MPL1? Definitely. But that ticks my box of status, external status. I look what Scotty and his coaching staff and that playing group achieved. But we wouldn't have been ready. And the club's evolved so much that it's never been in a better place to make that step. Because if we did it 3 years ago, it would have been a yo-yo. The pitches weren't good enough. We had no lights. We couldn't leverage sponsorship. we couldn't increase sponsorship because the junior program wasn't functioning to a higher level. Suddenly that's swelled. That's huge, you know, and it's a core group of people doing it, mate. Like you look at Paulie, Ben, Jamie, Tanya, Greg, small group of people that have been at the club for 30, 40 years, mate. Come on, where else does that happen? So, yeah, it means a lot to me, don't get me wrong. It's not as if I need to live there and be actively involved the rest of my life. I'm proud of that 5-year stint and I'll be a supporter now. And I think a lot of people need to take that on board, that as a head coach, you're a facilitator of a period of time. And then after that period of time, don't sit at home waiting for the results to come in and hope they fail to improve your status at that club. I love when I look at the results and see a mate and a group of players beat Caroline Springs on the weekend. I jumped online and watched a bit of it. And you know what? Playing a role and helping Jamie and moving the club forward to then know that, Jesus, go on, lad. Buzzing for him. How good's that?
No, it's quality. And I can only speak from a player's perspective. It's the longest stint I've had at a club.
Yeah.
Throughout my playing time. I was become a little bit of a journeyman in England due to injury. And again, we talk about that, you know, clubs going, right, all of a sudden he's injured, the chairman's wanting you out the door. And I'm going, well, I got injured on Tuesday night, 3 hours from home, playing for this football club, couldn't go to work the next day, and now you want me out the club.
Yeah, wow.
So from a experienced player, joining Langwarrin's the best club that I've ever played for. Easily, hands down, the people there, the environment. Me and Brad obviously car share, and we were talking about it on the way to training the other day, and he was saying exactly the same. And one thing that I have an opinion on in, you know, certainly Melbourne, in the MPL, VPL, all the leagues here, is there's clubs that it can be very almost like a roller coaster with the emotions. Spoke to somebody from a club the other day and they were talking about like, this massive changes are needed. I'm like, man, you're 2 games in. That was like 2 games in and they're talking about that. I'm like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would say about Langy in my time there is there's always that, it could be going so well. So we've had a great start to the season this year. There's just like a level line of just sustainability and sensible, smart thinking. I've also been in there where, me personally, I've been a shit show, sent off for the 3rd time this season, bad results, blaming myself, this. And in my mind, it's like a car crash exploding. But chat to yourself, chat to Greg, chat to Tanya, people at the club, and there's just that same line that there is today. Having had a great start or a shit show, there's just that level line of all right, everything's going to be all right. X, Y, and Z, instead of that environment where you go, right, get rid of him, get rid of this, do this, let's change this, right, let's chuck that all in the bin and change it. And I love that about Langwarrin. I really do. I feel like the club is growing. And as a player, I've seen that in my time there. This is my 4th year at Langwarrin. Believe it or not.
100 games, mate.
Yeah. But I love it there, and I can see the vision. I've bought into it. I've become, you know, just like, you know, how we always say, like, you become a Langy boy. Well, I consider myself.
It's funny how you do, because I like yourself, had a bit of a transient end of my career, you know, in the old Victorian Premier League. Year here, and you walk into a dressing room and you go, this isn't for me. You feel it, mate. You know, those fake handshakes, and there's no banter, and there's disconnect, and there's cliques, and you don't feel at home on the pitch, so you're never going to express yourself and feel comfortable. We only ever hoped that there's an environment that people want to improve, enjoy their football, and listen, mate, as a coach, you know, you're 1 game away from a disaster, crisis, getting the sack, and when you're winning, the players are legends and you're just nobody, right? Okay, no problem. That's the role you play, but there's no better feeling than walking into a dressing room after a positive result, standing back watching the team that listen, whether or not you lead from the front or behind, but I like to sort of lead and understand where and what we're doing and watch your team celebrate a win. Listen, it's a small win. It's not the Premier League, but geez, everyone works hard for that win, and that elation and emotion, is a special moment for everyone. And as a coach, it's a satisfying feeling, you know, because some days you win convincingly and some days you scrape through. So watching your result on the weekend, I can only imagine because, you know, from what I understand, the opponent doesn't like losing. And what better way? The Villagers to stick one up.
I've got one last question for you, and it's a question that I've probably always wanted to ask you, but I never have. Your pedigree in football, working with all of those players, Danny Murphy, Damien Duff, Dimitar Berbatov, and then you find yourself working with Rogan McGeorge, etc., etc.
You've got a wiki page though, right?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
no, that's Tom Young's. That's Tom Young's.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, we should. Was it... I used to sit there and I've learned, genuinely, I'm not saying it just because you sat here, learned that much about football just from listening to you, being coached by you. If you pop by Football Star Academy and see any of my sessions, it's like straight out of the book of Scotty Miller. Like, I genuinely learned so much. I become a little bit fascinated and intrigued by the way or how in depth it was you looked at football. And I never forget when Archie McPhee joined us and signed for us, and after about a month he come up to me, he's like, the Gaffer, he's like, mate, his knowledge is, I've never seen it before. And I'm like, mate, it's off the scale, you're going to love it, you'll learn so much. But from your perspective, and don't worry about offending any of us lads, because I really want to know, did you get frustrated that you maybe would have going through tactics or going through a session or asking some stuff of us, and if we didn't do it, was it ever frustrating because you'd worked here and now all of a sudden you're asking players here to do something and we may not get it or not be able to do it to what you'd known before, I guess?
I think the natural answer to that would be yes, and potentially it was in the initial stages because I was probably in a similar mindset to Aalborg. Let's go. Then I realised that I made the choice to work at this level, and then I hated that saying. I actually found it distasteful and disrespectful, and I tried to eradicate it from my language at this level. It sounds terrible because it's a level I'm working at, and I made that choice. That makes sense?
Yeah, of course.
So I found myself saying it, and I went, you sound like a right tit. How disrespectful is that? But that's the reality. I was only defining the level, but it could have come across as, oh, what am I doing here? Look at this level. But it never intended to be that. It was trying to find a way to describe this level of football and its complexities, because it is hard to lead and manage a team. I won't say it. You know what I mean? There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, of course.
So I had to adapt. I had to adapt my own expectations, if I'm honest. Expectations of wanting to win and shifting that from wanting to win to looking to improve players. And one of my closest mates, he works at Carlton, and we had great chats over the years because he was at Western Bulldogs, premiership coach, won the premiership with West Coast Eagles, elite performer, and gone into coaching. And he goes, listen, if you define yourself as a coach at the end of the year of how many games you've won, great, that will get you another job. But you can win games and not improve anyone either. You can win games, luckily. But he goes, listen, for my own sanity, when they were going through difficult moments as a coach, he goes, I measured my own success as a coach through player development. That gave me the sanity to not drink a bottle of whiskey after a game and just headbutt the wall, because it's about, is that player X, Y, and Z, are they better than when we started this year? Answer that, measure it, and review it. So in answer to your question, in a small section, my expectations had to change, mate, because the group of people we had were brilliant. Every single one of them, even the ones that didn't work out. And one of the moments, probably my hardest moment, was in my first year, and I was probably in a mindset of ruthlessness, of this is business, not performing out. And I remember this was my biggest shift. I had to release 2 players in the mid-season window of my first season because it was still a point system. Now you can just bring anyone in and it's a cast of thousands. Looks like a sheep shed. You can just sign anyone. But in the first year, I had 200 points or something like that. So I had to release to bring in to strengthen the squad. And we brought Betty in and Max. But I had to release 2 players. And I remember sitting after it feeling rubbish. Like I'm talking, whoa. And that was a defining moment for me because I had basically cut them off at the knees. I remember speaking to Jamie, said, that's hit me.
Getting rid of them.
Sabotaging them, just out. You didn't perform. And the way I did it was brutal. Right, you're here, we employed you to do this. You haven't done it. You're no longer a required player. Thanks for your time. Bang, out. And it was only weeks after that I went, whoa, I don't like that characteristic. But that was me at Newcastle, Alborg, Fulham. You're driven to have that level of intensity and this is business, out. If you're not performing, out. And I did it at Newcastle. I think the morning after the end of season dinner, I had half-hour slots with 12 players and sacked 12 players one after the other. Not required. Did it like that. Business. No problems. So that was a defining moment in my first year. I went, wow, where's the empathy in that, mate? That's just shocking. There's more to life than this. Autocratic boss that doesn't care for anyone. I still was ruthless, but had more empathy for people that are giving everything and playing to a maximum. I call it a Hyundai on high revs. You're only as good as the high revs, right? You know, there's Bentleys in the Premier Leagues and MPL 1 and 2's Hyundais are on high revs. But as long as you give your best, I need to adapt to that. But, God, it would have been nice to win more games. But we were almost there. But you know what? I can't fault people's effort. Can't.
It was the Chaos League. That's what they call it. Even if we've spoken openly and honest about it, you know, together, myself and you, but last year, the defining moment for me, it will haunt me, right, for the rest of the time, honestly, is that Dandy City game. So I had to play centre-half that day. And I remember it was close to the dugout at Lawton Park. Watching the boys, I was watching Archie, Tommy, Cal bop it for fun. And I was like, geez.
What's happening here?
Gone in at 2-0 at half-time. And we lost that game 3-2, right? And then I knew somebody that was playing at Dandy City that had spoke to somebody else that I knew, and they said they got in at half-time and said, gee, we don't even have an answer for what Langy are throwing at us here. Let's just get it forward, hope for the best kind of thing. And I know that there's shit bits on us that we've allowed them to then come back and win 3-2. But in and around that time, I couldn't tell you the points and the exact placings, but we were both sort of level or within a point of each other, us and Dandy City. And respect to them, they clearly went on and won the league. But I look at that day, and for me, that was such a defining moment in a season. And it was crazy last year because we conceded a lot of late goals and there was obviously issues surrounding that. And that's probably, you know, a good representation of where we're at this year, where we've just added a couple. Lukey Adams is a big signing. You go, in your mind, you go, well, imagine if we had him last year, the effect that he's had on the team. But I look at that last year and I go, we were so close. It was a crazy year. I'd come home one week after a win and I'd go to Jay. Yeah, like Jay's got it, the league on his phone and he's going, yeah, you like 3 points and you're in promotion places. And I'm like, yeah, sweet. And then we'd go and have a disappointing result and then we'd do the same thing. And Jay's going, mate, if you lose on the weekend, you could be second bottom. And I'm like, we were only just talking about being in the top two. It was really, really crazy. But last year, people, you know, that I chat to kind of talk about last year, this. And I go, it could have been better, of course. Yeah. But we were so close. And in the end, finished in with like Preston and Northcote and some good clubs at that level. And it was just so weird. We were so close, weren't we? We actually were so close. And the late goals did kill us. And there was elements of that. But
I think with this one, right, you have to protect your brain with it because there's so many moving parts with it, with ifs and whats. And I landed on this. Incredible amounts of goals scored. I think it was second or third in the league. Huge opportunity. Conceded far too many goals. And my final point is it wasn't the right time. It wasn't meant to be. Just weren't consistent enough. And on the back of that, the club's gone and recruited players to facilitate that growth. And that's what evolution is. So fair play to clubs that can afford to go out and buy 23 players. Fair play to the coach that can consolidate, position, and get that functioning. Brilliant. Hat off. Doesn't always happen. We see it every year.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've also, and I'll finish with this point, you've got to understand in context with who Langwarrin and what they are.
Yeah.
Highly successful state league club. I think I looked at it, I think it was the 3rd or 4th year in NPL football, competing with the likes of Northcote NPL 1 side. And I think I broke it down at the start of the year last year that 7 teams in NPL 2 had played in NPL 1 before. So not only have they got NPL 1 exposure, they've got NPL budget, they've got NPL demographic and access and reach to players, whereas Langwarrin's challenging regarding where they are. So the reality is this, mate. Protect your brain with that. Don't dwell on it. The facts are we finished X amount of points with loads of missed opportunities, but I'm firmly believe that at the right time, things happen for the right reason. And more importantly, the clubs has facilitated that with key people, mentality and quality. And things are looking good. Now it's just down to you to lead the group and don't lose your head, mate.
That's it, absolutely. Yeah. That's the task.
Good man.
Doing all right in a minute.
Yeah, I'm watching carefully. I almost need like little buzzer.
Yeah.
Red mist. I see the red mist.
Yeah.
No, you'll be fine. Stay off the backs of the referees and you'll be fine.
That's it. I'm trying to talk to them. Just trying to speak normally.
Oh, yeah. I remember that, yeah. Listen, how about you build a relationship with the referee? Rogan, we're trying to do 5v5 warm-up here, mate, and you're up there having a chat with the referee.
Having a chat, having a chin wag.
Relationships, mate.
Yeah, that's it.
Quality.
Nah, it's good. The best referees are the ones that talk to us. I know that you're doing your work with Identity Pro.
Yeah.
Training, you're enjoying life. It's good to see you genuinely. I know I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. It was brilliant to see you down at Lawton Park, relaxed, smiling, enjoying the game, having a catch up with you. I know there's going to be many, many more. And I know that if I do step into coaching when I finish up playing, that there'll be a few phone calls because I'll need some advice, mate.
There's not many people you meet that could. So, you know, it comes down to your own ambition. You've got the mentality to do it and you've obviously got the brain to do it as well. But it's a rewarding job. Don't let me talk you out of it. It's just pick the right boss.
Yes.
Pick the right boss, have the right chairman, have the right committee, but have a clear vision and having the likes of friends around you who are good at what they do is the most important, especially in NPL. We see it's too fractious and chaos. It needs to have a clear vision, but you'll do well, mate.
You're a legend. Cheers, Scotty. Thanks a lot for that.
Great to see you.
Oh, that was quality, mate.
We went on for a while, huh?
Just over 2 hours.
Was it? Oh, fuck, I did a baddie. Sorry, geez.